Wow, here we are again for the third Women in SABR IWBC Women in Baseball Conference. Hello from Ingersoll Golf Course here in Rockford, Illinois. Apologize for my background and my rather, crumpled look. We started this weekend off with an IWBC golf scramble. Would have been a joint golf scramble had we been in person this year. So we have had an amazing time and a lot of people participate. So welcome to the start of the third Women in Baseball Conference. This joint venture between SABR and IWBC started 3 years ago at a small conference in Arizona. And yes, we were actually face-to-face. And, little did we know it was going to be 2 years, and we haven't gotten back together again, but that's okay. Last year, when COVID threw us the first curveball, we simply stepped back, took a breath, and under the leadership of Leslie Heathy, we all kind of regrouped and we did our first virtual Women in Baseball Conference. And all we did last year was grow. We progressed, we grew significantly and managed to attract participants literally from around the world. And so we were just so pleased that while that was not our first choice, it turned out great. And of course, we had hoped to be in person this year at Rockford University, who is hosting the conference for the second year in a row. But again, COVID had other ideas, and we simply, stepped back again under the leadership of Leslie Heathy. And here we are about to kick off the third IWBC SABR Women in Baseball Conference. This year's theme, Breaking Barriers, Women in Baseball Around the World, focuses on women who have helped the game grow internationally. You'll enjoy a mix of all kinds of panels, creativity, and of course, scholarship as we celebrate the long history of women and girls in baseball around the world. In addition to those great panels and presentations, on Saturday at 5:30 p.m. Eastern, the IWBC will unveil the third of its 9 memorials that will make up our outdoor museum. This year's memorial is dedicated to women from the over 30 countries who play, coach, umpire, or simply support women's baseball around the world. Also on Saturday, SABR will announce this year's winner of the Dorothy Seymour Mills Award. A Lifetime Achievement Award, the Dorothy, as we call it, is given each year to a person who exemplifies Dorothy's own dedication to women's baseball and to the ethical and fair treatment of women in the game. And at 6:30 Eastern on Saturday will be our keynote speaker. This year, we are honored to welcome Dana Bookman, founder and CEO of Canadian Girls Baseball. We'll finish up on Sunday at 3, and then on 4, we'll begin planning next year's conference. Despite the challenges of COVID, and God knows there have been a lot of them, we have continued in just an adamant fashion to make sure that this conference is as successful as it possibly can be. And you know what? The committee that's worked hard on this are both SABR and IWBC volunteers. And of course, again, I will mention Leslie Heathy's name. You're going to hear Leslie's name a lot over the next couple of days. Of course, Leslie is an IWBC board member, and she is also a vice president of SABR. She was and is the driving force behind this conference and initially provided the bridge between SABR and the IWBC. Thank you, Leslie. And as always, we are off to a fantastic start. Now, I get to do what I've done now for 2 years in a row, and that is introduce 2 of my favorite guys. Scott Bush is the CEO of SABR, and Eric Fulcomer is the president of Rockford University. Both of these guys have been amazingly supportive of IWBC, of women's baseball, and certainly of this partnership that IWBC and SABR have entered into. There has not been one time when I've looked at either one of these guys and said, hey, can you? And they have said anything other than, of course we can. And I appreciate you guys so very much. And so Eric, as I said, as president of Rockford University, I can't remember if you're first on the list, Eric, or if it's Scott, but I'm going to turn it over to you guys.
Well, I don't have the agenda in front of me, but Scott, would you like me to go first? Is that okay? All right. Well, Kat, thank you very much for those kind words. And we are really happy to be partners with you and this organization and supporting women's baseball. And it's a beautiful day in Rockford. I'm sorry that you all can't be here with us in person. I was out at the golf course for a couple of hours today, and what a beautiful, beautiful day it is here in Rockford. And we're looking forward to someday hosting this conference in person. I want to say a little bit about Rockford University because some of you may have not been here or know much about us, but we were founded as a women's college in 1847. And we've been an educational pioneer since that time. And at that time, in 1847, when we began educating women, there, as you will recall, and from history, many Americans doubted the value and worth of educating women, but it was important to us and to our founders. And today, as a vibrant co-ed institution, Rockford University is recognized as a top regional university in the Midwest. We offer a variety of undergraduate majors and concentrations, adult accelerated degree completion programs for working adults, and graduate programs in business and education. And of course, Rockford University is proud to share a hometown with the world famous Rockford Peaches and to serve as the host for this year's conference. Despite the many COVID-related challenges, there have been many individuals planning, replanning, and presenting this weekend. And I just want to thank everybody who's involved in pulling this conference together. There are many people who I don't know, but there are many people working behind the scenes to make this happen. And their dedication has reminded us of the importance of this event, the importance of recognizing and celebrating women in baseball. So despite the pandemic, this year we celebrate not just America's favorite pastime, but also the sport's many heroes. We look forward to recognizing the significance of numerous contributions these women have made, not only to baseball, but also to larger conversations around topics like social equity and justice, themes that are very relevant today. So on behalf of all of us, the alumni, faculty, staff, and students of Rockford University, we're pleased to welcome you to this year's conference and look forward to someday hosting this conference in person on our campus. We hope you have a great weekend. And again, it's our honor to be able to host this conference this year again.
Thank you, Eric. I so appreciate those kind words. And we will get there in person. We will. I know it. It's going to happen.
We're counting on it.
Yes, so am I. So am I. And of course, Scott Bush, the CEO of SABR and our partner in crime, so to speak.
Yes, hello everyone, and thank you, Kat, and thank all of you so much for joining us for this year's conference. While most, if not all, of you are familiar with the Society for American Baseball Research, one of the questions I get from people who are not is, what is SABR? And yes, I get that question despite our 50-year history and nearly 7,000 members worldwide. But the answer to that question includes a lot of information. We publish content through journals, books, and our website. Our chapters hold dozens of meetings each week. We have an extensive collection of baseball research tools and resources, and we hold national events such as the SABR Analytics Conference and our annual convention. Now, we also have 33 different research committees, which span the breadth and depth of the game of baseball. Included in that count is our Women in Baseball Committee, which is responsible for this conference and our relationship with the IWBC. Over the next 3 days, you will be treated to first-person stories, original research, engaging panels, and awards, all exploring and celebrating women in baseball. And so I circle back to that question, the question of what is SABR? The answer truly is that SABR is this conference. SABR is a place for people to gather around their mutual baseball interests and share in fellowship, scholarship, and celebration. If you enjoy yourself this weekend and you aren't already a member, I hope you'll consider joining SABR as we continue to engage with all aspects of the game of baseball. And before I go, I do want to thank the people who have made this conference possible. Specifically, I want to thank the conference planning committee, Marlene Vogelsang, Kathy Headley, Mary Weeks Baxter, Catherine Forsland, Kat Williams, and our incredible chair, Leslie Heafy. These women are truly the driving force of this conference. It simply would not exist without their passion, energy, effort, and ambition. Thanks again to Leslie and the rest of the committee. Kat, let's have a great conference.
I'm ready. Let's do it. Thank you so much, Scott. Thank you so much. And now I believe we have a video, Rockford University video. Kathy?
I don't have the video. Was it sent to me? Sorry.
I don't see it either, so we will make sure that that appears later.
Okay.
We had the president here to talk about the university, and so
yeah, it's on my list. That's all. And I'm just reading through the list. So I apologize. That was probably my fault.
I will look for it.
That's okay. That's okay. This video you will see, and you want to make sure you see it because it really does show the beautiful campus and the students and the dedicated faculty of Rockford University. I've come to love it even though I spend most of my life on a college campus. I've come to think of Rockford University as a second home. So hopefully next year, fingers crossed, we'll all be ready to rock and roll. And so our first session moderator is Tracy Greer. Leslie, did you want to say a few words or introduce Tracy, or just turn it over to him?
I'm going to let Tracy take it away.
Awesome.
Thank you, Leslie and Kat. So it's time to get started with our presentations for the day. I'm your host for this session. My name is Tracy Greer. I am a SABR member and I'm a baseball editor at The Athletic. Our first block of presentations are going to key in on the theme of this conference. We're going to hear about women's baseball in Japan. We'll hear about the woman who owned a team in New Jersey's Lackawanna League, and we'll be treated to an author reading of a baseball novel. Some quick programming notes before we get started. Please remember to mute yourself so that everyone can hear the speakers. And also, in the interest of saving bandwidth, if you're not presenting, please turn your video, mute your video so that we can ensure that there are no internet disruptions during the presentations. We will have time for Q&A, but please submit your questions via the Zoom chat function. You can toggle the chat window open from the chat button at the bottom of your screen. And a special thanks to Kathy Headley and her students at Rockford University for providing tech support today. So leading off the Women in Baseball Conference this year are Callie Maddox and Lauren Osmer. Callie and Lauren are both professors at the Department of Sport Leadership and Management at Miami University in Ohio. Their presentation is titled, That Which the Boys Do, Taishō Baseball and the Women's Game in Japan. Callie and Lauren, welcome. We can't wait for your presentation.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and share our screen, pull up the slides. Wonderful. Can you all see that okay?
Yes.
Wonderful, thank you. Welcome, it's amazing to be here. We are really looking forward to sharing our thoughts about a Japanese anime series called Taishō Baseball Girls, and link this series to the women's game in Japan. So development of the women's game in Japan, the history, the historical context, but also the contemporary moment as well too. And ultimately, I think we're gonna argue that cultural representation of women's baseball really matters. It's really significant. Where do we see it? How do we see the women's game in our popular cultural forms? And in Japan, they've done a fantastic job of embracing this and really offering some very creative popular culture that celebrates women in the game. So I'm going to start off with our questions. These are the questions that's driving our research into this project and really kind of framing our analysis that we're going to share with you all today. And really first, we're curious, how is women's baseball represented in Japanese anime? It's a worldwide popular cultural form, just consumed around the world. And there's a rising form of anime that's centered on sports and that's centering girls and women as well too. So we're curious, how does women's baseball come into play in this form? And then a little more specific to Taishō Baseball Girls, how does this particular show capture and interpret the history and development of the women's game in Japan? What is it saying? What stories is it telling? How is it presenting the deeper cultural meanings and narratives of women's baseball in Japan? And how are these narratives linked to broader social forces such as modernization, westernization, and gender norms, and also gender equity? And then really broadly, what role does popular culture as a whole play in creating a much more inclusive and welcoming environment in which women's baseball can thrive? And how can we really encourage the creation and dissemination of a wide array of popular cultural forms that celebrates women in baseball? Now, we come at this, our approach, we are both informed by cultural studies, by history, by sociology. We kind of have an eclectic background in these sort of broader cultural studies of sport. So we engaged in a critical analysis of the 12 episodes of Taishō Baseball Girls, which was incredibly fun to watch. I got to tell my 7-year-old daughter that I'm watching cartoons, but I'm working. So we went into it really critically looking at the narratives and the storylines and the representation of the girls and women who were playing this game. So we did identify some themes and some sub-themes to pull out. And we're going to contextualize this within not only the historical time period within which the show is set, which is 1925, but also the contemporary moment. And it's important, I think, to link any popular cultural form to wider history around it, right, into the wider social world around us. And again, this representation is significant. So I'll start off by just giving a bit of the Japanese context. And this is your 2-minute history lesson about the game in Japan. And my research hasn't gone too deep. I really do want to continue on with this and dig a bit deeper into the women's game in Japan. But it's widely recognized that the first reference to women and girls playing baseball in Japan came in 1902. And this was in reference to a game at Nippon University. So it was a collegiate level game. The first high school team was formed in 1917, and the first high school tournament was run in 1919, which was sponsored by a local newspaper company in Nagoya. Baseball was included in the Japanese Women's Olympic Games in 1924 and 1925. So there were teams of high school and college-aged women who were participating in this larger scale sporting event in and through baseball. And this is interesting when we come to talk about the show, because the show is set in 1925. Around this time, there was a distinct pushback culturally against high school women playing baseball. There had been a declaration in the mid-20s coming out of this conference on high school education that declared baseball to be unfeminine and not a fit sport for high school aged young women to be playing. So this really created some tension. We saw high school girls and collegiate girls wanting to play the game, but the social norms were pushing back and saying, this is not fit, right? The gender norms, this is not feminine, this is not an okay sport for these young women to be playing. Therefore, the game got dropped out of these Olympics. But school and company teams continued to play. But eventually it just kind of died out. And of course, during World War II, there was a significant disruption in both the men's and the women's games. Shortly after World War II, in 1947, the city of Yokohama asked a local newspaper company to sponsor a women's tournament. And this proved to be the impetus for the creation of a professional league, which started in 1950 with 4 teams. You had the Romance Bluebirds, the Red Sox, the Nissan Pearls, and the Tokyo Stars. And the opening game, the season opener in 1950, attracted 17,000 fans. So there was an audience. But much like in the United States with the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League, there were questions about the male gaze. Who was coming to watch the game? Was it for baseball? Was it for the athleticism? Or was it to gaze upon these women's bodies? And the Girls Baseball League really recognized the significant role of this male gaze. And the picture here, you'll see the players wearing traditional trousers. Halfway through the season, they switched the uniforms. So they ditched the trousers and they started to wear either short shorts or skirts, again, to attract that male gaze. This did not last long. This league folded by about 1952. There were financial troubles and some semi-pro teams tried to get going, but it all folded really by the mid-50s, like in the United States. And women's baseball was fairly dormant in Japan until the early to mid-1980s, when the All Japan College Women's Baseball League was started. And this really got the interest up and going again. And this is now recognized as the longest women's baseball league that's been going on for the longest sort of tenured in the world. So since 1987. An official high school league was set up again in 1997, so sort of revival of the previous league. And this all led to the creation of the professional league, the Japan Women's Baseball League, which was founded in 2009. With the financial sponsorship of a health food company. And currently, this is still the only professional women's baseball league in the world. And we've seen the influence of this. It spills over. So the infrastructure, the pipeline from the young opportunities that the young girls have, the high school level, the collegiate level, playing pro ball, and then it translates into tremendous success for the Japanese women's national baseball team. They are 6-time World Cup champions and they are completely dominant. We have Ayami Sato, who is quite possibly, I would argue, the best women's baseball player in the world right now. We also remember the story of Eri Yoshida, who was a pitcher and she played professional ball in the United States and also with men in Japan as well too. Some significant figures coming out of the Japanese context. So brief history here to set the stage. Go ahead, Laura.
Yeah, so I wanted to give kind of a quick context in terms of representation that we see of women's baseball in anime, so in animation, television and film animation, and then in manga or in kind of comic book or graphic novel form as well. So there's been a fair amount of representation of women actually playing and participating in baseball. Yakyukyo no Uta is one of the kind of older examples. This was from kind of the mid to late 1970s, but followed the story of a college student, a female college student, Yuki Mizuhara, who's drafted by the Tokyo Mets, which is a fictional major league team, and becomes the first woman professional baseball player in the Japanese major leagues. It's been reproduced in lots of different ways. There have been spin-off manga series, there have been live action films, there's been a television drama adaptation that ran in the 1980s. So this particular story has kind of grown legs and we've seen it in some different formats. Some of the other examples on here, Princess Nine, Idol Ace, have involved women either establishing baseball teams in school or scholastic settings. Idol Ace is the story of a girl who ends up kind of switching places with one of her childhood friends on the team and carries that deception through not only the high school baseball tournament, but then through being drafted into the professional leagues and playing kind of undercover as a woman in that situation. Tamayomi and Hachigatsu no Cinderella 9 are two very recent examples. Those have both had shows that aired in the last couple of years, and again follow girls who played baseball when they were younger, trying to either establish teams in high school or kind of revive defunct teams that had existed there before. So we see a fair number of representations of women playing. This is not an exhaustive list, but some of the kind of main titles. And we also see women featured in boys baseball anime as well. So whether that's as supportive girlfriends or love interests, sidekicks or siblings, sometimes as team managers or scorekeepers, or being involved in kind of the operations side of baseball. Diamond No Ace, which is a series that's running now about a boys high school team, has a woman who's the main scout for the high school team as well. So again, just a very brief kind of selective overview, but all is to say that we do see multiple representations of women involved with baseball, whether as players or more kind of tangentially located with boys and men's teams. But Taishō Baseball Girls exists in this kind of unique space among these shows because it places itself in this kind of historical context and thematically ties itself strongly to kind of the broader social change that's happening in Japan during the Taishō era. So we wanted to go ahead and hopefully the tech will work on this, but give you just a short little clip from the show to give you a little bit of context and as kind of an example of what you see when you watch.
ところで、なぜ男子と野球をしようと思ったのかしら。それは鈴川さんは知っているの？あなた、そんなことも知らずに一緒に野球をしようとしたわけ？聞かせてちょうだい。実は先日お父様主催のパーティーに参加したのですが。
明子さんは最近の女性の社会進出についてどう思われます？やっぱり女性は家庭に入るべきだと思いますね。女性に学歴なんて関係ないじゃないですか。
ひどい。何その人。明子さん？明子さん。ねえ、でもなぜ野球なの？その方が自分は野球の選手だと。だから野球でというわけね。一緒に野球を。わかりました。その話乗りましょう。その代わり私に男子に勝つ方法を考えさせて。ありがとう川島さん。これであと6人集まればいいのね。あら、川島さんもお仲間に入ったの？あのね、知り合いからお風呂をもらってきたの。
All right, so a little bit of the show experience. So Taishō Baseball Girls is based on a series of light novels that began publishing in 2007. The 12-episode anime series aired in 2009. So the show is set in 1925, or year 14 of the Taishō era. The Taishō era ran from July 30th, 1912 to December 25th, 1926. And during this period, in kind of a broad social sense, we see the continuing influence of Western culture that began in the Meiji era before this time, a shift toward a more kind of democratic system of government and a climate of political liberalism, although, as Callie mentioned, in the mid-1920s and then into the 1930s, we'll start to see kind of reaction to that in the other direction. And we also see increasing narratives of modernity in different cultural spaces, including fashion, food, literature, the business sector. So that's kind of the broader social setting in which the show takes place. So just to do a very quick lightning summary of this, as you saw in the clip, Akiko, who's a middle school student, is at a party when she's told by her fiance that a woman's place is in the home. So she responds by attempting to recruit her classmates at the girls' academy she attends to form this women's baseball team, basically so she can beat him at his own game, right, which happens to be baseball. So the girls face a series of challenges. Some of them are more kind of logistical or structural challenges. So things like finding enough players to field the team, acquiring uniforms and equipment that fit them and that aren't made and designed for boys, and teaching themselves kind of how to play the game from scratch. But some of their challenges are more ideological in nature, from convincing the school chairwoman that this baseball team isn't going to go against the feminine ideals of the institution, or finding teams that are even willing to play them in practice games, to earning respect from their male opponents. So the show kind of climaxes with this face-off against Akiko's fiance, Iwasaki's high school team, which is in contention for the national championship, in this game that kind of stands in some ways for this sort of larger conflict about the place of women, not only on the baseball field, but in Taishō era society broadly as well. No spoilers, you'll have to watch the show if you'd like to find out what the final outcome is. But just to briefly touch on a couple of the kind of main themes that we saw as we watched this with kind of a more critical eye. So overall, one of the more visible themes was this kind of association with or linkage of modernization to women's baseball. Modernization is reflected in a lot of different ways in the show. Kome, who's our protagonist, her father has a restaurant that's transitioning to serving Western cuisine. At school, students are reading excerpts from Western literature like Little Women. As you can see in a couple of these screen caps here, uniforms are a part of that as well. We have girls in more kind of traditional attire, and then girls wearing the sailor suit, which is coming kind of more into vogue in school uniform fashion during this time as well. But we also see this kind of direct through line from the idea of modernization to girls playing baseball. So one example of this is, in order to receive resources from the school, they have to establish an official club. But instead of having the club name kind of explicitly reference baseball, they name the club Okakai, which they translate as a club that actively embraces Western culture. When they go to defend this in front of the chancellor and the headmistress, they defend it by saying that Westernization is something that the school embraces. They have a foreign teacher with blonde hair and blue eyes, Anna Sensei, who's the club advisor, and she also very much kind of encourages participation in this because she thinks it will teach concepts related to the school's kind of founding principles and concepts of Westernization as well. So we see this kind of direct link between these concepts of kind of modernization and Westernization that are growing in the culture, and then these girls participating in baseball in this high school context as well. We see it a little bit with the boys team also that they're playing against. At first, as you would probably expect, the comments from the boys are very gendered, right? They tell Kobe they can't see her pretty face behind the catcher's mask. They're really surprised that the girls can even toss a ball or catch a ball, right? But when they see the kind of effort and dedication that the girls put into improving their baseball skills, by the end in that final matchup, they agree to kind of go all out and play all out against them as this kind of sign of respect. And we see this kind of generation gap as well with the boys. So when the girls issue this challenge to the boys team, the coaches and the administration at the boys' school kind of reject it outright. They send back this response saying, allowing women onto the hallowed field of competition would be tantamount to blasphemy against the sport of baseball. But the boys team really wants to play them. They've seen the work that they've put in, right? They've talked to them along the way. And so with the support of one administrator, the boys really kind of fight for this chance to play against the girls. So we see this kind of generation divide where the teachers, the coaches, the adults are holding those more kind of traditional values of the sport being a space exclusively for men, while after seeing what the girls are accomplishing, the young men who are kind of growing up in this era are holding different views on the spaces that women can occupy in relation to baseball. So another theme is the kind of dichotomy between traditional Japanese culture and then again, this idea of kind of Westernization and the changing kind of social standards and gender roles that go along with that. So there is certainly some conflict between these two in the show, attitudes of family members and others about the girls playing baseball. But the show also draws connections between traditional Japanese culture and westernized women's baseball. Tomoe is a really interesting example of this. So she's a player on the women's team. She represents this kind of trope of the princely girl, so more kind of androgynous feature, has some kind of masculine traits, although she's still very romantic at heart. But she's the best batter on the team, and that skill is explicitly tied to her interest and experience in traditional Japanese martial arts, specifically kendo. For her tryout for the team, Ana-sensei pitches an orange at her and she slices it in half with a sword. So we see this linkage of, again, these kind of traditional Japanese elements or traditional Japanese sport and westernized baseball, and the kind of connection or bridge between these two, that skill in one can contribute to success in the other, and then vice versa. And then lastly, a major theme is the role of persistence and hard work in overcoming stereotypes and kind of changing the minds of people about women and girls entering into these sporting spaces. So most of the girls are initially kind of afraid of joining the team. They're concerned about pushback from family and friends. But in the end, the support of the other girls on the team and in that space gives them the kind of courage to persist. We see this development of real emotional connection with each other, this idea that hard work can overcome kind of weakness and lack of experience, right? They can't change the fact that they're girls entering into this male sporting space, but they can show that they belong there through developing their baseball skills with hard work, practice, and dedication. So on the one hand, as we know, right, personal hard work itself is not always enough to overcome kind of deeply ingrained structural barriers and social norms and values. But in Taishō Baseball Girls, we do see the effect and kind of influence of change happening on that kind of individual or more personal level with their kind of direct opponents and the people in their immediate social circles around them. Do you have anything else you want to add in terms of things? That's great. Okay.
So by way of wrapping up, we really do just want to encourage a deeper thinking about popular culture. And we need to consider the role that popular cultural forms can play in growing and spreading women's baseball. There's a global reach here. Anime is incredibly popular. Movies are incredibly popular. If we think about TV shows or literature, this is something that we need to capitalize on. If we're devoted and dedicated to growing the women's game, we need to consider the significance of popular culture. We need to broaden our scope of storytelling and representation. We need more stories. We need more representation. And I included some screenshots here of a Toyota commercial. Even if we think about things like commercials that we may not critically analyze, this was an amazing commercial from 2015 that featured women playing baseball and a whole community playing baseball. But what do we see? How do we see women represented? It's important, and the popular cultural forms are truly significant. Questions?
Thank you, Lauren and Callie. I think the very first question that's on everyone's mind is, how can we find the cartoon to watch it now? Cecilia popped a link in the chat, but where, from your side, where can we find this cartoon?
I watched it on YouTube. And I think I submitted the link. There is one station on YouTube that does have all of the episodes with English subtitles. I also ordered the DVD set off of Amazon.
Yes, Sentai Filmworks licensed it. I think in both, I'm not sure if they've done a Blu-ray adaptation yet, but absolutely on DVD. So if you want to support the original production itself, you can definitely feel free to order it through Amazon or other retailers as well.
Great. Someone had the question, what did the 7-year-old think of the cartoon, and is she into baseball?
She's not into baseball, which kind of breaks my little heart. But yeah, she has other interests. She did not watch with me. I invited her. She politely declined.
All right. A few more academic questions here. In the Taishō series, is there any acknowledgement of the 1925 women's teams?
I don't think so, not that I remember. Yeah. It's very kind of locally focused just on the one kind of girls team. They're in their space that they're operating in, they're the only ones who are playing. There's no mention of any other women that they've seen or any other kind of talk of women doing this. To everyone who you kind of see and interact with in the series, they are the first. So no, unfortunately, there's no connection to any of the kind of actual baseball that's going on widely at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, the foreign woman, Anna Sensei, is completely decontextualized.
Yes.
There's no information of where she came from, why is she in Japan, why is she working at this school. So it's a very interesting sort of, she just kind of gets plopped in there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. In your research on this, did you find any East Asian connections between China and Japan baseball in the pre-World War II era?
Oh, I've not looked into China. No, nor have I looked at any sort of cross-cultural connections there quite yet. That's a fascinating question. I think
Absolutely.
very open for additional research there. Yeah.
Okay. A question here, Callie, how did you discover this anime, and are you especially interested in Japanese culture?
How did we just, I think we talked about it together. And Lauren's the anime expert.
Okay.
And I think we
expert is a
we were
term.
chatting one day, and I can't remember how we kind of came up with the idea, but it was very much like, we should watch this, and we need to really think critically about this. I would love to go a bit deeper into Japanese women's baseball, the history, because it's so vibrant now, and the history is there. I would like to follow that up. That's definitely kind of in my research interests for the future.
Yeah, I had watched the series quite a few years ago now, I guess. And I think I walked into your office and you had it written, name of it written on your whiteboard. And I was like, have you seen this? Did you watch this? And she had said she hadn't, and she was really interested in it. And so that was when we kind of started thinking about kind of putting something together with this. So
I think a lot of people now have their Friday night viewing lined up for this evening. So thank you.
Yeah, it's a very fun kind of wholesome show.
It's really good. And I came in knowing very little about Japanese anime. I really enjoyed it.
Great. Last question, little off topic, but what are your thoughts about the TV show Pitch, the one that was kind of short-lived, in terms of cultural representation and whatnot? What do you think about that?
Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned that, because we were talking about this the other day. And we were lamenting that Pitch did not last longer. We got one season. I thought it was great. I thought they did a really excellent job of creating this narrative and portraying a very realistic, complex character. And I'm just really sad that Fox did not make a commitment to it. But I thought it was solid.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. This was a great presentation. We appreciate you coming here and sharing this information with us. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Tracy.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right. We'll get it set up here for our next presenter. Okay, our next presenter is Global Sports Business Consultant Keith Spalding Robbins, who brings us the story of Geraldine Rockefeller Dodge and her involvement with the New Jersey Semi-Pro Lackawanna League. A reminder, please submit your questions through the Zoom chat function, and you can toggle that chat window using the chat button at the bottom of your screen. So Keith, if you'll unmute yourself, turn on your video, and share your screen when you're ready. Thanks.
Okay, let's see, screen 2. All right, is that working?
Yes, we see the video, or the slides, thanks.
Good deal. I don't know about being an international consultant. That's someone more like Dan Evans. I'm just a guy from New Jersey. So this story started a couple years ago when I was researching the Lackawanna League and a team called the Maplewood Maples. And it's just kind of grown into other issues. And Geraldine R. Dodge and the Madison baseball team that's part of this league is really pretty fascinating. So let's see. Next one. First, I want to start with kind of the big idea. And since my family's from Rockford and Rockford University sponsors this, it's all about Rockford. And what I would say is baseball is at its essence a competition between pitcher and batter. And when that competition becomes something more magical, the participants become heroes. And when we have teams of baseball players playing, those heroes become something even more important. And in 1867, the Chicago Tribune tells everyone and announces that the Forest City had won and the Invincibles were defeated. And 20 years later, or 30 years later, there's a reunion old timers game in which the Rockford Daily Gazette announces that these are all heroes. And in Rockford's point of view, they wait another 80 years for this magic event to occur. And I would suggest it reoccurs with the Rockford Peaches in 1947 when they win the All-American Girls League again, a title. And in essence, Rockford again becomes the locus of goodwill in baseball. Rockford becomes the center of the baseball world. And to me, that's why Rockford's important. That's why this conference really belongs in Rockford. And it's a real honor for me to participate. But these big ideas we'll see throughout this whole slideshow, that if Rockford can become a goodwill of baseball for this time period, then maybe other towns can achieve that as well. And what we're going to start with actually a kind of a cultural foundation for this area. It's called Lackawanna because the Lackawanna was actually a railroad that existed in northern New Jersey. It ran from scenic Hoboken, New Jersey to the most bucolic Buffalo, New York. And the Lackawanna in 1902 ran into marketing gold, and they created a celebrity spokeswoman who only wore white and only talked in rhyme and rhythm and was always a cartoon character. And her name was Phoebe Snow. And as you can see there, she extolled the virtues of the railroad in all aspects. And everything she always said at the end, it had to rhyme with anthracite, which is a type of coal that the Lackawanna burned. Only during World War II did she actually wear an army uniform, but the rest of the time it's white. Well, what's fascinating is she was so embraced by the employees of the railroad that when the railroad had a baseball team, they actually called themselves the Phoebe Snows. And here is, of all things, a box score of the Phoebe Snows beating St. Thomas College 1-0 in 1908. And the interesting thing here is they score the only and winning run in the game without a hit. It was a pass ball, a stolen base, an error, and a sacrifice fly. From that cultural context, we see that the Lackawanna Leagues are then cities and teams that are based upon the Lackawanna Railroad's route in northern New Jersey. And actually, there's 5 Lackawanna Leagues. They come and go financially depending on the situation. And there's a successor to that starts in 1951, and it goes all the way to 1996. So it's almost a century of semi-pro and then amateur baseball in New Jersey. And what makes the Lackawanna unique and the town of Madison unique is you see Madison in the dark red star. It's right in the middle of everything. So all the other towns are really located on the Lackawanna line itself, all the way from Orange, New Jersey to Dover, New Jersey, and all places in between. Significantly, the season was Saturday only, and then the big summer holidays, which were all double headers. And so here's the ad from 1930, and admission was a ticket of sorts, but it actually was considered a donation rather than a ticket. And this one was 35 cents, which 1932 was a big deal. Further emphasizing the idea that this is a really big deal. Baseball immortals are all over the Lackawanna League. And this is just some of the Hall of Famers that I found that have direct connections to baseball, either in Madison or in the Lackawanna. And I'll start with the fine print from college coaches on up to the commissioner's office. There is somebody in either all of these positions that have a direct connection to the Lackawanna League. And so if you wanted to ask who and what, go right ahead in the text box and we'll answer it. The 4 bigger Hall of Famers are kind of symbolic of the entire semi-pro experience of baseball between 1905 to, let's say, 1950, or really, we have George Weiss, as the baseball GM. He's the guy looking for talent. And not surprisingly, he actually lives in Madison, New Jersey. So we could see people go to join semi-pro baseball to actually get discovered. And the most famous person who is a teenager plays in the Lackawanna and gets discovered, plays in Summit, where he just crushes Madison pitching. And that's known as, that's Joe Medwick, I guess, a Hall of Famer, and of course, Triple Crown winner. Then during the semi-pro year, and again, this is before integration in baseball, the most symbolic person here is Monty Irvin. And Monty grew up in Orange, New Jersey. And he and his brothers played for a team called the Orange Triangles, and then the Newark Eagles. And then they played in something called the Suburban League. And they were a rival to the Lackawanna, and they played Lackawanna League teams, all-star games, and on midweek games. So they're all very familiar. And then the final aspect of semi-pro is ball players who play after their major league career. And if anything, the Lackawanna League is filled with zero war players. I mean, there's hundreds of them. The most significant player who played after his Major League Baseball career is probably the greatest underappreciated baseball player in American of all time, and that was Larry Doby, who, after integrating the American League and really becoming an icon, played in the successor of the Lackawanna League for a year before he actually went to Japan, and that was a way of him warming up for it. Now, interestingly enough, Larry played with Don Newcomb, and of all things, Don Newcomb was actually born in Madison, New Jersey. So we've got Madison connections everywhere. That brings us to Madison's favorite and most important resident, and her name was Geraldine Rockefeller Dodge, and this is her portrait. It's hanging in a museum in New Jersey right before she was married in 1906, and she was married in 1907. If the name sounds sort of familiar, that's because she is a Rockefeller. And before she was married, she was worth about $100 million in 1907 money. Her father was William A. Rockefeller, who's John D. Rockefeller's brother and a partner in the oil company. She marries in 1907 Marcellus Hartley Dodge. And he was a poor guy. He only had $60 million. And his fame was Phelps Dodge Mining, that of all you in Arizona know well about them, and also was the Remington Rifle Company. And so he was actually president of the Remington Rifle for all this time period. What makes Geraldine's history so unique is that some of it is very well documented. And this slide is kind of color-coded. The white slide numbers are very much identified by the institutions that websites have on their relationship with Geraldine R. Dodge. And the two we're looking at are the ones in blue, Dodge Field Baseball and then the Madison Baseball Club. And these are unknown. And when I started researching this and talking to the Madison Historical Society, they were completely dumbfounded that anyone would even ask this question. It's like, how is she involved in baseball? And the simple answer is it's fundamental. She was the patron of baseball in this town, and she set the standard for it. And of course, she built the field, but she did more than just build the field. It was her money. She bought the land. She hired the consultants. She reviewed the contracts. She hired the contractors and supervised the contractors, and then gave it her approval. Now, one of the really interesting things about these charities that are existent today and these philanthropies, one, they are all known for public service, but at the same time, there's the real hidden agenda with all these is they really are her purpose in life to resolve and address issues regarding human suffering. And in many of these cases are a response to death, dying, and human and animal injury. And that's really her life's mission. The most significant event in her life was actually the death of her son, her only son, in a small town in France on August 29th, 1930. And kind of the really kind of unnerving thing about this, when we look at the slide there, he was buried on September 11th, 1930 in, I think, Tarrytown, New York at the Rockefeller Cemetery. From the day of his death, Geraldine really focused her life on appropriately honoring her son through philanthropic endeavors that she felt made life better and honored her son appropriately. So she built a public safety building, which is now the town hall, arches and other gates at Princeton University, and then a monument at the Great Swamp Great Swamp Refuge. And I should say, the fire truck website is the best one of all, and it's got the great picture. And so this is the result of her philanthropy. The fire truck's actually named Geraldine, and she actually christened it Geraldine. It was built 100 years ago. And that is Town Hall in Madison that she paid for. And she hired the architects, supplied the material, and actually she decorated the interior with priceless art and artifacts, including portraits of George and Martha Washington and a bronze of Abraham Lincoln worth millions. The key person in this whole relationship with her and baseball is actually a man named Raymond Patterson. And Raymond Patterson was Geraldine's private secretary and public representative. And actually, he and her shared a common heritage of being dog fanciers and involved in dog shows. And he, of course, was in Europe buying pedigree dogs when her son dies. And so he actually returns to America with his remains. So he's a trusted family friend. And in some ways, it's hard to describe that relationship in today's terms, but he's both her best friend in many ways, but then she is actually his boss. So his money is actually her money. And so when he talks publicly, he's really talking for her. And then the blue items kind of give us the timeline of what we're looking at in baseball. It's very clear and specific. There's a beginning and an end. December 2nd, 1932 to July 18th, 1939. He's the president of the baseball club. And then that means during that time, she's the financial patron of the club. It's hard to explain the club. It's a community club. It's sort of like the Green Bay Packers, but she's running it. He's running it with her money during this time period. From 34 on, he's the club manager, the general manager and the field manager. Then he becomes just the general manager and kind of the key leader in the Lackawanna League. Now, what makes baseball great is that it creates rivals. And in New Jersey, what's quite nice is all these little towns have their own town paper. And some of them are online and some of them are not. And one of Madison's great rivals during this time is actually the town of Millburn in New Jersey. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Millburn. It's just a couple stops away on the train. And the Millburn sports guys are full of opinion, and they're more than willing to share it. And this is a quote from the paper in 1935, and it says, "Oh yes, Ray's a great guy, but," and the big issue there is, but it's the fact that he has little trouble securing funds to back the Colonels. And in fact, the Colonels are the name of the team. He gets money from Mrs. Dodge, and he can literally outspend everyone. In fact, he can outspend Connie Mack if he needed to. And that's really the whole contention and rivalry in this league is between Millburn and Madison, and who will be the best team in the Lackawanna League. And this is one of the really kind of fascinating things in the discovery of this team. The day after Hartley's death and the news makes it to Madison, there's actually a baseball game played on Dodge Field. So we'll start, there's a picture of Dodge Field as it is today. And back in the 30s, it would have had extensive bleachers. Actually, it held about 1,500 people. So there were a lot of bleachers there, which now they're all long gone. But the Madison Eagle newspaper noted, and right there, a moment of silence was observed for the late Marcellus Hartley Dodge Jr., the son of the donor of Dodge Field. And that gets us to really one of the first big kind of inventing baseball, doubleday moments. How many other baseball fields in America were actually built, designed, and paid for by a woman? And it's a question for anyone if you can answer that. Now, what makes it really cool on this baseball game, it's between Madison and a team called the Penn Redcaps. Well, if you look up the Penn Redcaps, you'll find out that they're a Negro League team. And what makes them really special is the real name is the Pennsylvania Redcaps of New York City. And when you go to baseball's reference website, it's blank. So I want to introduce to you to the Redcaps, and here they are. And the Redcaps were especially probably moved by the event of Hartley Dodge's death. And if you look at the first inning, and a pitcher named Taylor, he has no at-bats. In the first inning, they let Madison score 9 times. And I think let him win the game. And I think it's probably all out of sympathy. But it was quite that. So this kind of gives us a league record of the time when she's running the team and paying for it. So the official name of the team, or the unofficial, is the Madison Colonels. We've got the Summit Red Sox, the Milburn Blues, Morristown Colonials, Dover Howitzers, Chatham Howitzers. Dover actually has 3 teams. That's why there's no name. And then we have a lot of one-year wonder teams, and then a team called the Maplewood Maples. And actually the Maples last all the way until the 1970s, but during this time period, they only play 1 season. But if anyone goes to Stetson University, your university president can tell you a lot about the Maples. So you can ask him, and if you ask nice, I'm sure he'll tell you a good story. What we also see here for the titles in the bold, Madison wins it every other year, 34, 36, 38. They play all 7 seasons, and they dominate the league, winning 25 games more than anyone else. Milburn wins 3 titles. Chatham won 1, and then Morristown wins the last one. And then again, we have all these one-year wonder teams down below. And we'll focus more on South Orange in a little bit. So what I'd suggest is that 1934 was a magic year for baseball in Madison, and especially for Mrs. Dodge and her team. And so I call these boys the Dodgers and Pinstripes. They're a prototypical semi-pro team. They win the Lackawanna League championship. But what makes them really special is the 2 key players in that were actually born in Cuba. The big first baseman next to Ray Patterson on the far right in the standing, his name is Joe Rodriguez. And then on the opposite side, on one knee in a uniform that looks way too big for him, that is who's known as Jimmy Jimenez. Now, what the Madison Eagle did during his time, which was really pretty special, is they had a section in their paper called This Week's Heroes. And on September 7th, as it says there, Jimmy Jimenez was this week's hero for the town of Madison for pinch hitting and relief pitching, which brought Madison their first Lackawanna League championship. So it was a big deal, and it's part of the whole process of hero making that baseball can do. By 1936, things are getting out of hand in Madison in the Lackawanna League. Also, at the same time, the Morris and Essex Dog Show, which they're more famous for running, is becoming a national event with almost 40,000 people there. And so Ray Patterson stops being manager and hires a new one. And he hires Joe Press, who's also manager of the Bushwicks. And we see this kind of baseball arms race occurring in the Lackawanna League, where we have shared managers between other semi-pro teams, but more importantly, we have shared rosters. So Milburn and Glendale have the exact same roster, and Morristown and a team in Pennsylvania have the exact same roster. And it gets to be chaos. And you can see here kind of the schedule. So Friday night, there's a big game in Brooklyn. Saturday is the headliner game in New Jersey at the Lackawanna League. And then Sunday is the doubleheader against Negro League teams. And that kind of determines who's playing where. And as a result, the Milburn item again, first a comment saying, the question is not how Madison gets its money, but how can this league last? Everyone's going broke. In fact, everybody does go broke in 1936. So much so that the league folds. And then there's a playoff between Madison and Milburn for it. The other key issue here is that the rosters and schedules are all messed up. And so one game, two guys show up to play second base, and there's only room for one of them. And what is really fascinating in 1936 is all these teams share rosters except for one, and that's South Orange, New Jersey. But as you can see here, the picture of South Orange, it might be one of the first semi-pro integrated teams from 1936. So it's, you know, they might be last in the league and broke, but they really kind of set new barriers and broken barriers, which is really a wonderful thing. So Ray Patterson actually sees the crisis and then makes front page news in Maplewood for stepping up and saying the league will not die out. And I would suggest that really what he's saying is, we understand there's problems, but Mrs. Dodge and I will restructure things and we'll make sure that there's baseball. And they do a couple things that are really important. One is they establish a baseball school in Madison that's open to both men and women. And they fire the joint managers to kind of recreate that league back into a more stable financial position. And again, the league kind of does recover a little bit, recover to 37, 38, and 39. And then in 39, we have kind of the big crisis where global events overwhelm suburban New Jersey. And right in the middle of the season, again, it's just announced the league will end. No more baseball. And that date is actually July 18. And that's the day we can say Mrs. Dodge no longer is involved in baseball. And then when the story is read a little bit more, we see some really kind of contradictory things. They say fan indifference. Well, I've interviewed a lot of people in New Jersey in 1939, and I said, what's going on? And the answer really wasn't indifference. It was the 1939 World's Fair. And so here's some postcards, or actually playing cards, that a person that I interviewed gave me from their collection on World's Fair stuff. And I picked two cards just for an example. One, of course, is Rockefeller Center, which you're probably familiar with. Also, what makes World's Fair kind of unique in 39, that's the first televised baseball game was held in conjunction with that. And then the other card is actually what Pennsylvania Station looked like. So that's where the Penn Redcaps actually worked. Took the whole block. So back to the other issue here of what Ray said is that suspension of the league was necessary. The delegates had only one option available to them. And I would suggest what he's really saying is there's no more Dodge money coming your way. You have no choice but to fold the league. And they do unanimously. And then it notes that Ray is sailing to Europe. And that brings up a big question. Why is this guy sailing to Europe in the middle of the summer rather than playing baseball? And that answer is actually given to us by a woman named Karen Winter Churchill in a couple essays and actually a website. Ray is going to Europe to rescue German Shepherds and other dogs from World War II and from, if you will, being conscripted into the Nazi army for death, destruction, and all sorts of military things. So his mission to Europe is actually a mercy mission to save these dogs before the war, which explains everything. And interestingly enough, the league revives next year. The team gets revived next year. So this is clearly an issue with a mission of mercy that had to happen right before 1939. Now, Mrs. Dodge's legacy is twofold. One, probably the most interesting one and important one, is her Dodge Field legacy. And during the 40s, when the team is an independent team, independent semi-pro team, Dodge Field, Madison, New Jersey becomes one of the key places for Negro League baseball to be seen. And I have two box scores here. One from my favorite team, the Orange Triangles, with Monty Irvin's two brothers, and it'll be the mayor of East Orange, a man named Bowers, playing. And they play the Triangles twice. In this game, they lose the first game in extra innings, and they win this one convincingly, I think 9-5. And then a couple of weeks later, the Newark Eagles are invited to a very large crowd, and the Newark Eagles just crush them. As they say, the murderer's row broke loose twice. And the game's not close. It's 9-4. And it's a very successful endeavor for the Eagles. Back to Madison, though, we have something really unique happening. And so I would suggest that there's two fantastic role models for women in this town. One is a cultural, if you will, fictitious advertising woman named Phoebe Snow. And here's Phoebe. Her sleeves are rolled up and she's in a canoe and she can paddle it by herself and she's enjoying her vacation. And then there is Mrs. Dodge at a dog show, at her own dog show, the Morrison Essex dog show, giving her favorite breed, the German Shepherd, some treats and some instructions. And like a good dog, he's behaving. What makes this time fascinating is all of a sudden we see small print, a league is organized within Madison. And then some titles start popping up in the paper all over the place. A team called the Thunderbolts. And the Thunderbolts are pretty good. And they beat Chatham. And then they beat Chatham again. And then they play arch rival Milburn and they defeat them as well, which is always good. And here they are. And so I'd like to introduce to you a team you've never heard of with the coolest baseball name of all time, except maybe the Yankees and Cubs and Giants. But other than that, the Thunderbolts, which is really a great name. The coach is Mrs. Jones. It's Angela, May, Jerry. The O'Brien sisters play in numerous positions. And then we have the Coakley sisters who are playing in different positions as well. This is just from one game. They will play different positions in other games. And then the one person of kind of interest is Catherine down there in the bottom. Actually, she's the first one that goes on injured reserve. She slides into second and hurts her ankle. And then finally, I want to leave you with this idea that they too meet the test. They become this week's hero in the Madison Eagle. And indeed, Angelina Trezza is the hero of the week, for she pitched the Thunderbolts, the crack girls 9, to a victory over the select club of none other, the Ridgedale Avenue men. So I would suggest to you that the second best team in Madison, New Jersey in 1934 were the Thunderbolts. And so that is really our conclusion, that baseball competition at its best and highest creates goodwill within a community. And for this magic moment here in 1934, our baseball heroes generate this goodwill. And in some way, I would think and hope that the joy and the community benefit of this goodwill helps soothe Mrs. Dodge, who's trying to recover from the death of her son. And so with that, we'll ask questions. So thank you.
Thank you, Keith. We actually don't have time for questions, but if I can recommend that you pop your contact information into the chat so that anyone who wants to follow up with you, I know that there were questions about the Madison Baseball School and some other things.
Okay.
If you can pop your contact information so people can reach out.
Sure. I'm sorry for talking too long.
That's okay. This was really interesting. Thank you. And you had mentioned this is the first time that you had connected Geraldine Dodge to baseball.
Yes.
So
yeah, the Washington, I mean, the Madison Historical Society thought I was had a hole in my head when I asked them to help me. So
well, this came out really well. So thank you so much. We appreciate it.
All right, you're welcome.
All right. If we can get our next presenter lined up. Awesome. Thank you for putting your email in the chat, Keith. Anyone who has questions can follow up. You might need to end your screen sharing.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Stop share. There we go.
Great. All right. So our next presenter, it's time to hear from the author, Peter Rutkoff, who will be reading to us from the first chapter of his new novel, Pinstripes. Welcome, Peter.
Thank you. Hello. Keith, I want to just point out something. Red cap is a very interesting African-American symbol, not just of the train station porters, but the use of the West African color of red was a way that the porter was signaling to other people that they could trust the person about to carry their bags.
Yeah, yes, it's a vital role.
So anyway, does this mean I'm on?
Yep, you're up.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me and also for listening. I'm a little bit intimidated because I'm not used to doing this kind of reading. No PowerPoints, no music to play, and you've only got my voice. And I hope what I will share with you is of interest to some of you. It's a privilege to be among you. So I will read you two sections. It shouldn't take a half an hour of the very beginning of a novel that I have in draft, but it's also, anybody wants to do me a mitzvah on this New Year's Eve, looking for a publisher. Here we go. Part 1. Just as she finished lacing up her spikes, the old flip phone lit up. Oh, fudge, Ellie said to herself. She laughed, thinking that her grandfather would have been proud as she reached down to pluck the device, oh, that stupid word, out of the batik shoulder bag hanging in what they still called a locker. The room lay empty. The other players were already out on the field, but Ellie liked taking her time, savoring last few moments of peace and quiet before everything exploded in light and noise. We need you Saturday night, 10 p.m., Lancers, 149th, Maddox, Nika. The text shimmied back and forth before a flight of colored balloons filled the screen, then disappeared. No point calling back. If she really pushed it, she could make the drive in 36 hours and arrive in the nick of time. First things first, girls, she told herself. Take care of business here and they'll greet you with open arms. Mess up and you won't even bother to back the T-bird out of the spot the Barons reserved. Ellie tucked her glove under her right armpit, squeezed it for the sensation of well-oiled leather warm against her rib cage, and tugged at the brim of her red and black cap, the block BB letters in white at the peak over her forehead. Deftly, she reached her left hand behind her head, found the twist of her ponytail, and pulled it through the open space above the elastic headband. She patted the tiny red button on the top of her cap for luck. She shrugged her shoulders to loosen the fit of her jersey, slipped the Rawlings whitey-fard vintage glove that her grandfather had given her years ago on her right hand, and walked up the worn concrete runway, spikes clickety-clack out onto Rickwood Field. Normally, Ellie didn't like appearing late in the game. Relief makes me think of Tums, she liked to say, and I'm a starter. But this game was so close, the Barons up by a single run with 2 out and 2 runners on top of the 9th. It's what you live for, he told her years ago, that moment when it's simply up to you. The crowd at Rickwood stood as one, cheering for their favorite young hurler. Ellie could feel them. They were with her. She glanced over at the stands behind third base and imagined she could hear them talking gossip and smack and politics, what they always talked about. Couldn't go to a game this time of year without hearing all the buzz. Ellie peered into her catcher's glove as the runners on first and second danced, arms akimbo, daring her not to lose her concentration. The batter, a lefty, knocked the dirt out of his spikes, raised his bat toward her with his right hand and called, "Okay, sweetie, let's see what you got." Ellie smiled the sweet grin she knew disarmed bullies and stuck out her tongue as she finished her windup and sent a curved ball right at his head. When he flinched, she knew that she had suckered him even as the spinning ball bit into the air and dropped wickedly down into the catcher's mitt with a satisfying thud. The umpire barely raised his right fist as if anyone in the park could doubt the call. After a second pitch, exactly the same as the first curve, with the same result, Ellie paused and turned her back to the batter, catching the signal for the next pitch from the shortstop. Relayed from the manager, the sign called for a third curve. Ellie knew that's what they would expect, and because it was what they always expected, she flashed her own sign to the catcher as she went into the stretch. Always risky to call off the manager, but one more pitch and she was on her way north. She smiled to herself, first woman to pitch in the big leagues. Now that was something. The batter glared, spat, and twitched his right arm even tighter. A Joe Morgan wannabe, Ellie thought, as she adjusted her grip on the ball ever so slightly. This one's for you, she thought, as she remembered her grandfather showing her exactly how to hold the ball. Never aim, he always instructed. Think the ball into the glove and make sure you throw it with the same motion as your other pitches. She focused her concentration on the catcher, went into a belt-high windup, and released the ball with the snap of her wrist, sending it spinning counterclockwise down the middle of the plate where the batter adjusted his swing ever so slightly, as if to stroke the ball toward left. But as Ellie intended, the pitch broke the other way and bore its way in toward the batter's hands. Completely fooled, the batter continued to swing at the place where he thought the ball was going and missed Ellie's screwball by a foot. Game over. The place exploded in applause. Last contest of this truly strange season. Girl pitcher, granddaughter of Whitey Ford, pitching in a minor league ballpark filled with the ghosts of the Negro Leagues, of Satchel Paige and Josh Gibson, and no one in the stands had any idea what might or might not be next. As they picked themselves up from the wooden bench seats and made their way across the infield, the fans high-fived the Barons, laughing their way to the dugout. Ellie joined them as they walked across the worn green boards that made up the outfield fence, worked toward the boards that made the outfield fence, itself decorated with faded arrow images of men wearing brown felt hats and a jaunty tilt. Several of the fans patted her on her right arm. Several others offered more high fives. But for the most part, they were content to let her walk alongside them. To her right, she overheard three voices conversing, a young girl, perhaps 12, and two elderly men, one black and one white. The girl, wearing a baron's cap and holding her glove, couldn't stop asking questions. They all began with why. Why did the majors reorganize? Is that why they call it 2.0? Why did it happen? Why did we lose all our teams in the South? The answers from the men were all single words, at least for the first 10 steps. Greed, corruption, money. I'm not sure I understand the difference. The girl pounded her fist into the deep well pocket of her mitt. I mean, how could this happen overnight? Well, now that's a mighty big question for a small person. The black man elbowed the white man, clearly her father, as they stepped out of the infield skin onto the worn, threadbare outfield grass. You want to tell her, or should I? It all began with Rolling Stone. The white man draped his arm across his daughter's shoulders as they walked in tandem. What, the band? Mick Jagger's even older than you, Pop. Nah, the magazine. You must have heard of that. The black man spoke with a slight drawl, extending his vowels into diphthongs. They what spilled the beans, that so-called expose about Hall of Fame voters. I don't get it, the girl responded. Don't the baseball writers vote on the Hall of Fame? Exactly, her father added exclamation points to his voice. Exactly. Someone bribed a handful of writers, and that threw baseball into a downward spiral for more than a year. The girl raised her palms to the sky and hunched her shoulders. Okay, here's what happened. The black man looked down at her. Someone figured out that a Hall of Fame election was worth about $25 million to a player's team in terms of sales of gear, not to mention TV rights. And several teams, small market teams, mind you, had been working to put their thumbs on those scales for several years. But baseball was getting top heavy. Players, agents, owners making tons of money, and people like us buying tickets and t-shirts realized we were putting money into the hands of a bunch of greedy crooks. I get it, the girl announced. Like a house of cards, just add one more and the whole thing collapses. Her father beamed. You called it right, my dear, right on the head. Everyone, and I mean fans, TV sponsors, figured out that they were being conned. Conned? Taken advantage of, like they lost their confidence in the honesty of the whole shebang. Once they got that, they simply stopped coming to games. The girl glanced over her shoulder at Ellie, who had trailed them for the course of the conversation. But we're here. We love baseball. And she lowered her voice to a whisper. And look, there's Ellie. What a pitcher she's going to be. Already is. Ellie reached out and patted the young girl on top of her Baron's kid-sized hat and whispered back, "Don't tell anybody, I'm already there." And with that, she pulled her cap off and jammed it onto the girl's already covered hat. So this is now the second part of what I will read with you. Jim Lund, Jumbo to his friends, and he was a friend to everyone on the team, and he knew it, was worried. Worried he had got the time wrong. He thought he'd be first, wanted to grab his usual stool at the bar. 7 p.m., just in time for the local news, and they even had his station tuned. A well-turned-out woman, red curly hair and lithe, sat at the bar. She even had a steno pad in her left hand and acted like she was interested enough to take notes. They watched as the black and white TV mounted above the mirror scrolled through the scores of the last regular games of the season, the one they had rebranded as MLB 2.0. Hideki Matsui, beautifully turned out in a three-piece suit with matching ascot and pocket square, read the scores in a beautifully baritone voice. Malapropisms aside, Jumbo mattered. Vanishes, Matsui read. Yonkers vanishes, New York. The other games come up slowly. Brooklyn smashes Philadelphia. Then Boston trumps Jersey City, and finally New Haven squeaks by Providence, which Matsui pronounced squawks. At the bottom of the screen, a gel informed viewers in the New York metropolitan area how to obtain tickets for the 3-game postseason playoff scheduled for the last weekend of September. If we get there, Jumbo mused, wondering who would pitch and hoping Rico wouldn't ask him. The winner, the screen announced, will go to the October Classic, this year's MLB 2.0 version of the World Series. The best of 5 against one of the Great Lakes Division teams from Chicago, Detroit, Cleveland, Milwaukee, or Erie, Pittsburgh. The woman next to him, he'd seen her before, and it came to him in the locker room, talking to their first baseman, Gibby, just after the game only hours ago. "You that reporter from PM, right? Pleased to meet you, Mr. Lund. Name's Betty Cooper. But call me Beth, not Betty. Sorry about the game. The curve you threw in the 7th fooled everybody." She smiled politely. Beth tucked her pad back into a raincoat pocket and threaded her pen into a pile of orange hair at the back of her neck. "How about buying a girl a drink?" She regretted coming without Gibby, the team's first baseman. He did say he'd meet her, true enough, but that didn't explain why she felt it important to show up solo. Instead, she motioned to the bartender. "I'll have a draft," she paused, "and a shot." And she paused again. "And put it on his tab, will you please?" And she nodded in Jumbo's direction. After a few sips and a chug, she noted that the bar had filled up. Clusters of men were scattered at several tables, engaged in banter. punctuated by laughter and an occasional burp. It looked like any cop joint she had ever been to. The men tilted their chairs back on rear legs, posed in male postures, knees wide, flannel shirts rolled above their elbows, hooded sweatshirts with faded logos from a variety of regional colleges, Fredonia, Oneonta, even Rutgers. Their shoes revealed something about their ethnicity: Timberland construction boots, black Converse high tops, and a silky pair of blue Nikes. Same arrangement as the configuration in the clubhouse. Blacks, whites, Hispanics, speaking a range of New York accents, working men enjoying an evening in each other's company. A few women sat randomly around the periphery of the bar, whose dark paneled walls displayed out-of-date calendars, a mechanical plastic big mouth Billy Bass that no longer wiggled, an array of faded black and white photographs of long forgotten New York sports figures, Y.A. Tittle, Tom Tresh, and Sweetwater Clifton. What Lancers referred to, the bartender only shrugged. "Beat the hell out of me," he rasped. The women sat with their backs to the bar facing the room or along the wall, ceding the inner space to the males. They wore, especially the younger ones, colorful ribbons in their hair along with faded jeans and waffle Henley shirts. Some were clearly police or firefighters, like the men, and others just hanging around looking for company or action or conversation. One of the women looked like no first responder Beth had ever seen. "Who or what is that?" she whispered to Jumbo. He didn't need to follow her eyes to know. "Her name is Nika." Veronica Silvers, elegant and draped in a white silk blouse that she wore out over black ties, and sported a hammered silver squash blossom necklace that set off her violet eyes. She seemed to be in complete charge of the two men who shared her table. "Just think of me as your insider guide to this universe," Jumbo whispered to Beth as he fed her the details about the trio. To Nika's right sat a tall and rangy black man, looked like Bernie Williams. In fact, he also played center field. His voice made him sound like Denzel Washington, rounded vowels with a hint of Southern roots. He rested his clean-shaven chin on his hands and explained how the Laffer curve, "He's no pitcher," said Jumbo, accounted for just about everything in the current crisis of capitalism, where insufficient income when graphed against rising expenses told anyone with ears to listen the jig was up. "And what jig might that be, June?" asked Nika, flashing a 200-watt smile, one that Beth thought only partially disguised a smarmy sneer. June carefully explained, Should I keep going?
Yes, Peter, that was technical glitch, I'm sure.
Okay, all right. June explained it in terms of, "I know you'll understand, being that you are our general manager and assistant to the city's deputy mayor." He stopped and smiled back with equal disingenuousness, "being that I seem to report to both your hats, Miss Silvers." Nika tossed her raven hair back and laughed. "Let's just stick with the business of baseball, June. That other stuff belongs in the office. I don't want to confuse the two." Lund leaned over to Beth and whispered in a voice as soft as a summer breeze, "His parents named him after Robert Johnson's stepson, Robert Jr. Lockwood. He really is Robert Jr. That's why we call him June." The third person at the table tipped his chair even further as he spread his hands out before him. The catcher, Beth mouthed silently at Jumbo, "Rico." Jumbo nodded back. Rico's gnarled hands, knuckles on his right broken at least twice, spoke volumes. Beth already knew he was the team leader. Rico raised his hand and called for another draft. "Hey, bring another one over here, would you?" A peal of laughter rolled across the room, sounding like a barbershop quartet smoking weed. Beth startled. "Not to worry," Lund told her, "just the infield table having some fun." Four men sat hunched over a large pot of steamers, each dipping the spitter ends of the clams into a dish of melted butter and dropping the morsels into their mouths. Like seals, she imagined, each of them using their left hands to manipulate clams while their rights guided half-empty bottles of Modelo Negro toward their lips, almost in sync. Almost. Gibby looked up from his plate and winked and motioned for Beth to pull up a chair. Me, she mouthed. Me? Gibby signaled the bartender, held up 3 fingers, and drew an imaginary circle around the table as he pointed toward the center. Another round, he called for the best infield in baseball, present company included. Then, without prompting, without warning actually, Nika pressed her palms down onto the table in front of her and muttered something like crap, and picked up the glittering blue iPhones peeking out from beneath the Gucci handbag that Beth imagined to be fake. Gotta take this, Nika announced, smoothing her slacks over her hips, back in a jiff. The room silenced, as if someone stuffed it with wads of cotton, turning it into a freeze frame, rendering everybody motionless. And Beth noted, no one was willing to break the spell. It was as if time itself stood still. Sure, the TV over the bar continued its fuzzy broadcast, but no one had bothered to pay it any attention in the first place. The image on the screen flickered black and white dots that launched shadows across the room. Nika pushed her knuckles into the bar, releasing the room from its stillness. She walked dramatically out and then back in through the twin swivel front doors with a sachet that transformed the tap room into a version of an old saloon. Her hair looked mussed, her face red, as if she had been up to something naughty and hardly bothered to hide it. But give her credit, Beth thought, she really knew how to command a room. Nika stood dead center, hands on hips, one foot slightly ahead of the other, as she very slowly and deliberately glanced around the room, making eye contact as she inscribed the space with her presence. I got news, she spoke softly, big news. Pedro, the shortstop, shouted, boy or girl? That earned him a withering glance so fierce that he lost his balance and fell off the chair, which he had tipped back onto its rear legs. He sat sprawled on his ass and the look on his face acknowledged his complete inability to save the situation. Sorry, he muttered softly, boss. Nika walked across the room, picked up the beached chair carefully, and then extended her hand and lifted Pedro to his feet. His face darkened before she leaned into him and simultaneously gave him a chaste peck on the cheek and a somewhat louder pat on the rear. Beth had heard of Nika's intuition in these matters. Some called it premeditated and cunning. When she tried to catch Gibby's eye, he carefully looked down at his watch. Make a note, Beth said to herself. See if he's heard the same thing. Nika resumed her place at the center of the room. Her face seemed less flushed, and her eyes gleamed with the pleasure of accomplishment. She surveyed the now standing crowd, holding beer bottles, breathing in the air of anticipation. Fellows, she began, clearly avoiding gentlemen or guys. Fellows, we are, as you know, still feeling our way through this new version of baseball. Municipal baseball, some call it. I'd rather call it New York City baseball. It's not your father's baseball, is it? She fixed Jim Lund clearly with her line of sight. He stroked his jaw and allowed his eyes to meet hers. Well, boss, it sure ain't, he allowed, but remember, my old man was born in Stockholm. Wise guy, she smiled back at him. She likes him, Beth noted. Old MLB was a great game, we know that. Nika looked around again and couldn't find any contradiction. It was led by terrible people who made even worse financial decisions. When the mayor accepted the challenge of becoming the first commissioner of the baseball league, he did so with the same spirit that informed his career. To be perfectly honest with you, when he called me into his office only a few months ago, he confessed that he had no idea how complicated this job could be. He told me then, I know this baseball thing is no piece of cake, but Veronica, this job is mind-blowing. Imagine we have 16 teams run by 16 political offices, 16 city halls, 16 levels of bureaucracy, 16 AFSCME locals. Took my breath away when he put it that way. Hey, don't forget we all got to work 2 jobs, someone called out from one of the tables. Just like ball players always did, knucklehead, June responded in his unmistakable Denzel Washington voice. No one in the room knew better than he about the challenges of daylighting and moonlighting as the only way to achieve social and athletic success. Everyone listened as they did now when June spoke. No shame in a hard day's work to a working person's wage, none at all. The players nodded, but if Nika shared June's working class consciousness, she didn't show it. So here we are, Nika added. We are at the end of our season and we have one last game to play. Only one, Rico. She nodded to the table where she had been seated. Tell them what's going on. Rico took a pull from the beer bottle in his gloved hand. It looked miniaturized, nestled there in his palm. His voice sang with all the resonance of a true New Yorker. This is simple and you know it. Win tomorrow and we keep playing. Lose and the season is finito. The room grew quiet. Everyone knew that the team had exhausted its pitching staff. All the players stood in a tight circle with Nika at the circle. She had their full attention. At that instant, the doors swung open to frame a young woman standing in the glow of the red neon light that blinked lancers. The girl looked the world like a trim college student who loved Diane Keaton and Annie Hall. She had buttoned her paisley vest into a V so that it tightly covered her white cotton blouse and allowed her sleeves to billow softly from shoulder to wrist. The vest looked like it came from the same rummage sale as the loose-fitting brown twill pants and multicolored glass beads that swung from her graceful neck. Blue eyes and an aquiline nose matched the sly smile that spread across her lips. She seemed completely relaxed from the toes of her Minnetonka beaded moccasins to the tightly wound blonde ponytail that bounced ever so slightly as she stepped gracefully into Lancer's taproom. Despite the appearance of grace, something in her face reminded Beth of a deer caught in the headlights. She opened her eyes wide and broke into a broad, toothy grin. Hiya, she called out. Her voice betrayed just the slightest twinge of discomfort. Fellas, Nika strode across the room and raised Ellie's left hand. Meet Ellie, your new teammate. She'll be on the mound tomorrow, our starting pitcher, Ellie Ford. Welcome to New York, Ellie. Nika offered her hand, extended to a kind of hug relatives share with long-lost cousins. And welcome to your new job teaching history at Hunter College High School. Welcome to the Yankees, and welcome to Pinstripes. She tossed the pinstripe scarf with the blue New York logo across Ellie's shoulders and kissed her on both cheeks. The room froze again. Not even glances to see who looked surprised. No meaning to be read. Beth slid silently to the corner, buried her back in the space between the doorway and the wall, and stared, wondering what would push through the collective fog. She might as well have guessed.
Thanks, Peter. That's a great way to end that piece with Ellie being introduced as the new player on the Pinstripes. Really appreciate getting a chance to hear that beginning of your new novel. So we're all going to look forward to seeing this opportunity. So thank you for sharing with us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. And I'll be glad if I have time, I'll answer whatever questions you would like.
We're right on target for our panel presentation to start. So again, if you want to do the same thing that Keith did and put your email into the chat, anybody that wants to follow up with you can
my pleasure.
Do that. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yep. And so now I'm going to turn it over to Kat Williams, and she's going to take it away for our panel presentation.
Yes, and I have made this transformation. I'm no longer in my golf clothes, so I appreciate your patience with that earlier. It is my honor to moderate the first panel for this year's conference, and it's Personally, for me, I hope it's a panel that we do every year. I am a big proponent of talking about what I call our baseball bios, our personal stories, our personal connections to the game, because I think they're very important. For some people, there are, for some people, it's when they first learned about the game or when they first played it. And for some people, it's being a fan, but we all have that connection. And so I'm really grateful that I have an opportunity to kick this off, first of all, but again, what I hope will be a continuation throughout. And so we're very, very lucky this year to have two folks with us, Laura Hirai and Suzie Hunter, who are going to share with you their own individual stories. I'll introduce both of them first, and then Laura, if you'll go first, and then Suzie. That's just the way we're ordered. I asked them both to sort of, keep this around 20 minutes each, because I think this of all panels, we would like to have some give and take and back and forth. So Laura is a senior majoring in Arabic and Spanish. She is a curious linguist seeking a career in the British Foreign Services. She's from the UK. Her family inherited Japanese, and apparently Japan is where she learned the game of baseball and learned to love the game of baseball. So for some time now, she's been playing and talk to us about her experiences. Suzie Hunter is a journalist from Philadelphia. She most recently worked for the ABC affiliate in New Haven, Connecticut, covering breaking news, Hartford athletics, soccer, and her personal favorite, and you gotta love this name, the Hartford Yard Goats. She's driving across country while raising $30,000 for the Boys and Girls of America. She's going to tell us about her observations of female fans. So welcome, everyone, and thank you both. Laura, if you'd like to go first, that'd be great.
Sounds good. I'll be sharing my screen.
Okay.
For presentation. Alrighty. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much again for having me today's conference. It's a huge honor to be part of this group and to be talking to you all. And I'll be talking about myself, which is kind of easy to do, I guess. And I hope that you find it all interesting and can take something away from my experience of being a baseball player as a woman. So I'm going to start from the very beginning of my life, as I think it's a journey to become a baseball athlete, and it has taken to where I am right now, as I'm calling in from Swarthmore, Pennsylvania. So I was born in 1999 in London, UK, to a family who's from Japan and the UK. So I had a multiracial background and a multiracial upbringing. And until 2004, I was living in London until we moved to Japan, sorry. And here I was exposed to a lot of sports. My parents allowed me to do anything I wanted. I was always jumping up and down on the sofa, on beds, everywhere. And I was able to transfer my energy into sports. So I skied, played table tennis. I went to Torrey Pines and played golf there. Played some football, soccer, and also swam at school. My parents were very much pushing me to become a golfer, as there was a lot of money in there. However, there were other sports that I was very much keen on, including baseball. So as you all know, in Japan, baseball is huge, and we seen through anime, seen from today, seen through sports online, on the telly, everywhere. Japan is probably the biggest sport, baseball is probably the biggest sport in Japan. And living in Tokyo, there was a baseball center really nearby. And there was also the Yakult Swallows, which is the local team in Tokyo as well. And there I was able to watch a lot of games and also go to the batting center and watch a lot of kids play. So while I was there, I fell in love with the sport. I loved watching it, and it made me want to join a team. So in around 2009, I joined a local baseball team. And I don't know if everyone knows, but in Japan, the way that sports is structured is very strict. The coaches at the very top, there's very much a hierarchy. And then the players all are like robots almost, and participating in the sport, obviously trying to get better, but it felt very much like very structured. And from there, really stemmed my love for the sport. And in 2009, I went to California, where I participated in the Nike baseball camp at Northridge University. And there I was actually the only girl there. So in the application online, I recall there being a rule that it was only for boys. And my father insisted that I can still go, and told the coach that I was coaching this program to let me go. And they said yes. And since then, we've been lifelong friends, but this really was the start and the exposure to baseball at its finest. And as you can see through the photos here, in this photo right here, I'm the only girl in a bunch of boys playing the game we love and learning from the best. All right, moving on. So I returned to London after the triple disaster, so the earthquake, tsunami, nuclear disaster. And I had to fall back on something that I loved, and that was baseball. Fortunately, in London, there was a club called the London Mets, and it was still a new club back then. So as you can kind of see from the uniforms, from how we all were just a bunch of local kids, primarily British. Some were also from America, who wanted to play the game and play against some other local teams. In 2012, we won the national championships for our age group, which was the under 14. And from there, I continued to play the sport. One day, the primary pitcher for our team injured his arm, I think. And our coach asked me to pitch. I'm not quite sure what he was thinking back then, considering I was the smallest and I was one of only 2 girls on the team. However, I was always eager to try new things, and I put myself out there and I became a pitcher for the London Mets. And the following year, we traveled to Prague in Czech Republic and participated in the European Club Championships for the first time. And I remember pitching the first game, and somehow I managed to pitch 31 strikes in a row. And that's all I can remember from the event, considering we didn't make it too far. But I realized that through practice and through exposure to competition from around the world, and for example, here I was in Europe, I was able to play, I guess, against higher competition and learn from the best. In this tournament here, the Rovigo tournament in Italy, I won Best Pitcher in this tournament, again, being the only girl. It never really translated to me that I was the only girl and that I was playing a sport that was primarily for boys. I think when you're a child, you don't realize that as you get older, there are these segregations that still exist. However, my coach was very understanding, did not see me as a girl, saw me as a baseball player who loved the game. And this is how I continue to progress. And this is how I continue to view baseball as a sport for everyone. Moving on in 2013, as well, at the same time that I was experiencing competition for baseball in Europe, I was also selected for the Great Britain national softball team, where I competed in Prague or somewhere else in the Czech Republic, in Ostrava. And this was the first time I actually learned about softball. So I know in the US, girls are very much directed towards softball straight away. They're never really directed towards baseball, seeing it as a male sport. However, through the journey that I had taken, it was never a sport that I considered or even knew about. So when I first played softball, I had no idea what I was doing. The ball was huge in my hand. They were throwing underarm. The whole angle was different. Everything was a surprise to me. Although it was nice to play with a bunch of girls, it was that was the only difference that I experienced. And it was still fun. I love playing baseball, I love playing softball, and it continued this way. Also going into the Little League Europe and Africa qualifications, we had some training and tryouts to play in this team, and the best players from the UK were selected, and I was one of them. Again, I was the only girl selected for this team, probably the shortest as well. And we played, and we didn't get far either in this round. However, again, it was great exposure to high competition, particularly the Czech Republic, who eventually won and went to the Little League in America. Moving on, 2014, again, we participated in the European Club Championships, hoping to win. I was a pitcher again for this team. It's a great bunch of people. We're growing as a team. We're growing past 3-4 years. We played together. And again, we lost to the Czech Republic. However, we came second. And I thought this was a great turning point for the club, being recognized as a highly competitive team, and my own exposure being an only girl on this team. All right, moving on. Again, in 2014, we participated in the Little League Europe and Africa qualifications. This time around, again, this team was on fire. We just came back from coming second in the European Championships. However, again, we lost to the Czech Republic and we came second, so we did not make it to America. But in this tournament, I pitched in the semifinals against Italy, and I was able to complete, I think I was able to complete 7 innings in, oh, sorry, it was the whole game, I think, with 87 pitches. And I was very much still warmed up for the next game. I didn't play, but it was definitely an achievement for myself, and also for my next teammate who pitched the next game, who pitched 88 pitches. So there was a little competition going on there. Moving on to 2014 again. I was selected for the Great Britain national baseball team. And this was the first time that a female had been selected for the national team for baseball. And for this squad, we traveled to the under-16 USSSA gold medal games in Florida, where we played at the Osceola County Stadium, which used to be the spring training stadium for the Houston Astros. This was an insane experience. Again, I did not realize how big of an accomplishment I had achieved, because I had been playing with these guys for a few years now, and it hadn't changed. It was just another team for me. However, when I was stepping up on the mound, you can see the opponents thinking, what's she doing there? Like, what's the girl doing? She throws like 60 miles an hour. It's so slow. I can freaking smash this ball. There was a game we played against Puerto Rico, and those boys were huge. They didn't look like they were 16. And when I pitched against them, there was one batter who looked like he was ready to crush this ball, and I could see in his eyes. However, I pitched him a strike straight down the middle, missed it. Next pitch, I threw a changeup inside, whiffed it, and then my go-to pitch was a curveball. I threw that, and he was trying to swing for the fences, completely overswung. His head was all over the place, completely missed it. And when he was walking back to his dugout, you can see everyone just staring like, what is she doing? Why did he miss? What is going on? This shouldn't be right. How is a girl striking out a guy? And this is the second time I realized, wow, I feel like this is not what it's supposed to be. I shouldn't be here maybe. But again, I continue to be exposed to the game. The coaches still trusted me, trusted my slow pitching, trusted my mechanics, trusted my technique of throwing my curveball and changeup. And I was able to compete and have a worthy spot on the roster. Moving on to 2015, this was a very hectic summer as well. I participated in the European Softball Championships in Sardinia, Italy. with the Great Britain national team. And then after that, I was selected for the under-18 Great Britain national baseball team, where I met Melissa Mayhew, who was the French national team player who was also a woman. I did not pitch against her, however, I met her and she's a great person, a great athlete, and she has been a true inspiration for myself and I'm sure many other people as well. Again, the squad, I was again the only female selected on the team, and I was the first pitcher in the tournament for Great Britain, where I played against Germany. Now, the Germans are a very good team. We unfortunately did not win the game. However, the next day, one of the German players was selected or was drafted by the LA Dodgers. So I think I should take credit for that. Moving on, again, 2015, I was selected for the World Softball Championships national team. I'll skip over the softball because that's a bit irrelevant, but it was a very hectic summer. This was in Oklahoma. And again, I had a great time playing with fantastically talented women. Moving on, 2016, I had an email from Cami Kidder, who is this person right here, noticed my achievements and reached out to me saying, hey, you should come to Reading, Pennsylvania and help inspire some women on some girls to keep playing the game. So after my public exams in London, I flew over with my grandmother to Reading, Pennsylvania, and carried out this camp for these girls and met amazing people such as Kat Williams, Perry Barber, Mabel Blair, Shirley Berkovich, Donna Cohen, so many people. And this is when I realized that women playing baseball was not just a me thing, it was a thing for everyone. There was more people out there who were doing the sport. I was so unaware of what I was doing and what people had been doing in the past. And this was a true, I guess, a point in my life where I realized that this is not just for me, this is for other people as well. And I was very happy and very honored to have been there. Moving on, for the softball championships or European championships, we won. This is the first time in national history that we have done that for softball. However, moving on to baseball, the next year, I was selected for the national baseball team for GB, where again, I met Melissa Mayhew, did not pitch against her. However, I pitched against Italy and and Germany again. I wouldn't say Great Britain is still a developing team. However, this year we've been playing very well, and I can see the progress that the team has been making. Again, I was hugely honored to be selected for this team as well. Again, realizing that my unique experience was worth sharing, I was able to share my story with European Baseball Softball Magazine, which is an online magazine sharing stories on baseball and softball in Europe. I was also interviewed for my local newspaper, saying that I would be in the Tokyo Olympics, though we did not make it. And I was also interviewed for Yomiuri Shimbun, which is one of the biggest newspaper companies in Japan. And they wrote a little article on me in 2017. Again, there was more softball involved at the World Championships in Florida in 2017. And 2018 as well, there was more softball that I played in for the national team. So all of this exposure to softball and baseball now, I did not know that there was such a high standard of sport in the US. And so in my senior year of high school, I applied to play softball in the US, realizing that baseball is still not as welcoming for women as they are for men. And so I am currently in Swarthmore College playing softball. And here's where I am right now. And we made it to the conference playoffs for the first time my freshman year. And it has been a great team to be a part of. Also in 2019, I participated in the Canada Cup in BC, British Columbia, for the Great Britain national softball team. And in 2019 as well, that summer, this is where my life completely flipped. I got an email saying that they're looking for clubhouse assistants for the New York Yankees and the Boston Red Sox, and I was nominated to be one of them. So I chose to work for the New York Yankees. And through that, they were also recognizing that I was the only girl in the clubhouse. And they asked if I would like to be the ball girl for the New York Yankees. So at their regular season game in London at the Olympic Stadium, I became the first ball girl for the New York Yankees. And of course, we heard about Gwen Goldman, who wanted to be a ball girl for the Yankees over 60 years ago. She deserves that title. However, I was very lucky to be the ball girl during 2 games for the Yankees, throwing with Brett Gardner and Aaron Hicks, which was absolutely insane. And I also went semi-viral on Twitter when a softball coach was at the game, tweeted this with a video, and it got a lot of views, and I received a lot of comments, and this opened so many doors for me. And this is the story that I really want to share, that the New York Yankees don't have ball girls because their stadium does not have lockers for women. However, for this at the Olympic Stadium, they were able to create separate rooms, and I was able to have my own locker to get changed and to wear the uniform. So this uniform that I'm wearing right now, or in this photo here, those are Brett Gardner's pants. I'm 5'1" and I'm very small. And the smallest person that they had on the team was Brett Gardner. He's about 5'10" or 11. I think he's about 180 pounds. I'm nowhere near 180 pounds. So I look like I'm from playing baseball from the 20s with my baggy pants. But hey, I got to wear a New York Yankees uniform, and I wore it with pride, and I'm so lucky that I got to wear it. Now looking ahead, so this has been my story. I'm very fortunate to have shared it with you all. But as we know, there are so many more stories out there that are worth listening to and sharing to. And there are people right now who are writing their own stories and writing their own histories. So I hope that you've got something from my story. It's very unique, I guess. But there's so many more out there. And right now there's a Great Britain baseball women's national team, which is brand new. And I've been asked to be the spearhead for that. So I'll be doing my best to develop that team in the future. And I hope that baseball continues to grow. I know Susie's been doing so much for baseball as well for women, and everyone else on this call has done something as well. So I really appreciate you all listening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laura. You are amazing. We could probably do 3 or 4 hours of your career just at this point, right? Next, I noticed that you have Suze on your name. Do you prefer Suze or Suzie?
You know what? My Zoom is connected to my Facebook, but I keep my Facebook as Suze, so it's like harder for people to find me on Facebook. So yeah, please call me Suzie.
Okay, no problem. Well, Suzie, welcome, and we can't wait to hear about your travels.
Laura is such a tough act to follow. An actual good athlete in the chat. My softball career was 2 seasons, age 9 and 10, and I was terrified of the ball, which is a terrible quality in an athlete. So my career was not very long and very unsuccessful. But now I get to cover baseball, which is pretty cool too.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you guys so much for having me. Leslie, Kat, thank you for putting this all together. Laura, thank you for sharing your story. I'm so glad you guys are all here. But yeah, my name is Suzie Hunter. I am a reporter, I'm a writer, and I'm currently driving to every MLB ballpark in one season. And a big part of it is a Boys and Girls Club fundraiser where I'm trying to raise 30K. So tell your rich friends, but it has been an absolutely magical baseball season. Can you guys hear me okay, by the way? Okay, good. All right, so yeah, most recently I was a reporter at the ABC affiliate in Connecticut. So I worked in New Haven and in Hartford, but of course, my minor league baseball fans will know Hartford is the home of the Hartford Yard Goats. So I got to cover them from their inception back in 2016. And that was an absolute blast too. But yeah, I have a lot of stories, both as a fan and as a reporter. Some crazy experiences throughout this road trip. I will say I've heard just like some crazy things. Like the one thing I hear almost every ballpark I go to when I tell people about the trip that I'm going to, a dude will always ask me like, oh, are you a baseball fan? And I'm like, that's such a crazy thing to ask someone who is dedicating their whole summer to going to every ballpark. I'm like, of course I'm a baseball fan. Like, I don't know if you would ask a guy that same question, you know? So it's been very interesting. But also this summer, some of the craziest stuff that I've heard is from people online. Like, we know that people get really bold when they're behind their computers, when they're not saying it to your face. I've heard some very nasty things, some very mean things from male baseball fans. But yeah, I think, some of the weirdest like things that I get, like, oh, she's just doing this so she can meet a player, so she can date a player, because yeah, players famously hang out in the stands during games in their downtime. Like, it just makes no sense. But yeah, there are definitely some men out there who think that women exist at a baseball game just to be hit on. And that's really frustrating too. That's not the case with everyone, but it's just something that I keep seeing all over the country, and something that I would, really like to see a lot less of. But I also have a lot of crazy experiences from being a reporter and covering sports. So I mentioned that I covered the Yard Goats, and this one story always sticks out in my head to me because it was kind of one of the, it was early on in the season. So the Yard Goats are about to start their first season at home, and an older male coworker said to me, oh, you're going to have a Bull Durham summer, like implying that I'm going to relive the plot of that movie, while I'm working. So that was really weird to me. First of all, why would a man that you work with ever comment on anything in someone's love life? But also why would you say that I would do something unprofessional, seek out relationships with players like that? So it was so gross and inappropriate. And I remember saying to him, I kind of gave him a chance to back out of it. I was like, I don't know what you mean by that. And then he actually doubled down and emailed me a link to the trailer of the movie. And was like, oh, this is what I'm talking about. I'm like, are you serious? I should have gone to HR. It was absolutely insane. So yeah, weird experiences like that. However, I think it's such a cool time to be a woman in baseball as a fan and as a reporter. So I know I mentioned the social media aspect and getting a lot of really disturbing comments, a lot of not so nice things, but also social media has connected me with an amazing network of women who work in this industry, who are so supportive. And that's the coolest thing to see, is that women who are working in sports are so supportive of each other. I love cheering them on whenever they accomplish something great. They love cheering me on, and it's absolutely magical. And the same goes with a lot of female fans that I meet too. I've met up with a lot of women across the country that I've met on Twitter, that I've met on Instagram. And that's so cool to see. But going forward, I want to see more of that, but also from our male allies. I love seeing it in the industry. Whenever I accomplish something, my male colleagues will post about it and say wow, look at her, she's doing it. So I want to see more of that from men in the industry, from male fans. And yeah, I just think that better representation of women in sports, women in baseball, is going to make this fan experience better for everyone. So yeah, I wanted to keep it short because I wanted to make sure we had lots of time for questions, because I am a chatter. But yeah, thank you guys so much. I loved sharing my story. Yeah.
That's fantastic. You will no doubt have a lot more stories by the time this is over. Some of them you may be able to repeat, and some of them not, right?
Exactly.
So I think, because this is a panel about personal stories, it's about connections, personal connections to baseball, and sports in general, but specifically baseball. I think it's perfectly fine for us to ask some questions, talk a little bit about our own. We have one question for you, Suzie. How difficult is it? How difficult is it to maintain your enthusiasm for the game in the face of inappropriate comments by male fans? Good question.
Michael, thank you. That is a great question. I do get annoyed, but yeah, sometimes I'm a little nicer, sometimes I'm a little not so nice. I'll tell you this, one of the stadiums I went to, he was a very drunk man, but came up to me, it was like, hey, what are you doing here? Like, do you want to like go on my boat later? It was a very weird interaction. I was like, no, thank you. Like, just trying to enjoy the game, thanks. And when he walked away, he gave me the finger. He was like so aggressive. It was such an aggressive thing. So they're not always that aggressive, but like usually I try to like stay, like I try to come back with a quip or just kind of try to be funny or a little sarcastic. But yeah, it's not always easy. It kind of depends on the mood I'm in and what they're doing.
Yeah. Laura, have you experienced that sort of abusive language or, you know, that kind of behavior directed at you as a player?
I probably received some abusive language indirectly. So probably when I wasn't around. I did hear when I was first selected for the Great Britain national baseball team, that many parents were saying, why not my son? Why not him? Mm-hmm. Saying that, why is she on the team, not him? Which I did hear. But I think that's just, you know, how the sport goes. It's a sport for men. That's how it's always been. Right. So that's how everyone perceives it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think, you know, that's often the case. Any other questions for our two panelists? I'm sure they are willing to discuss their experiences. Well, one of the things, and I'm just going to keep asking questions, so the rest of you jump in there at some point. One of the questions I have, Laura, is you have played ball, whether it's baseball or softball, you've played baseball or softball all over the world, pretty much. How has that experience been different for you? The experience meaning the way you were treated, or the amount or lack of respect, for example. Is there a place where it has been particularly bad, or a place that has been particularly good, or has it just pretty much been the same?
I think for me personally, it's been the UK has been the least receptive at first of my selection. I think in Europe in general, they had Melissa Mayu, who was selected for the MLB tryouts. And I think that was a huge stepping stone, and she really paved the way in Europe. However, when you have a few more local people in your area, especially in the UK, they're still yet to kind of understand the true meaning behind a woman playing baseball and what it means for myself personally and what it means for the sport. Right. So I think at a local level is probably the most intense.
Right. That's interesting. Well, Suzie, we have a question. Did any of the men stand up for you when a guy was insulting you while you were at games? Was there, is chivalry dead or not?
Oh my gosh, you know what? I feel like, so like a lot of the games that this kind of stuff happens to me at, I am at this game alone. I go to a lot of games by myself. But I feel like I've kind of like been fending for myself. And I don't know if it's necessarily like chivalry is dead, but I think like people kind of try to mind their own business. But yeah, for the most part, it's just me barking back, but I'm from Philly. So like, I got words, I got hands if I need them.
Yeah, right. Well, it's unfortunate that you need them.
Yeah.
Well, we have a couple of other questions I see in the chat. Leslie wants to know, Laura, what was your best baseball experience?
the best experience for me was the story that I mentioned about striking out the Puerto Rican player. He really meant it. He was ready to really hit that ball hard, and everyone could see it. Everyone was probably saying, wow, she's so small. Throws 60 miles an hour. It's not gonna, why is she even here? Why is she even playing? And then when I struck this big guy out, the entire Puerto Rican team was shocked and almost laughing at him for his error, I guess, misjudging myself. Right. And I think, with baseball, you have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk. And I feel like I was able to do that and stand up for myself and really show that talent is recognized regardless of gender.
That's great. That's great. Suzie, you are in the stands, correct? Not in the press box.
For this project, I am very much in the stands. Yes. Thank you for asking.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, I think we had a couple. Laura, can you tell us more about the development of the Great Britain's women's national team? That is quite a story of its own.
Yes, it's a huge step for women's baseball. Back in 2016, actually, at a friend of mine, we organized the first women's baseball game, just a game in the UK. And that received a lot of good publicity for us. And that was only the first step into achieving more exposure for women and not being afraid to participate in a male sport by having just women on a team. Now we have a league for women in the UK. And through that, we're now creating a national team. And we're hoping that this team will compete at the next European Championships, the Women's European Championships next year. This will still at the foundations. They're currently tryouts right now. But I think for Great Britain and for other teams in Europe as well, it's still at the developing stages and the only way is up.
Right, right. That's fantastic. And they have, oops, I have lost myself here. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me or see me.
Yeah, we still can.
Okay. So I am wondering if you can talk a little bit more, Suzie, about what are your plans with all of this information? You had a couple of questions on here. Are you planning a book? What are you going to do?
Yeah, no, I absolutely need to share the stories that I've heard, that I've experienced. So I plan on writing a book after this. But in the meantime, I've been vlogging about my travels. I post about it on social media, but I'm really excited to get to share it in a more formal capacity. So I will be writing a book right after I get off the road. Thank you guys for asking.
Good. Well, and then maybe we can, have you back and have you tell us all about the book and when you're ready to publish that. I think definitely. That it's going to be some interesting information, that's for sure. Laura, can you tell us a little bit about what you are doing next in terms of, I know you've got a lot of things on your plate. Can you share what you've got next coming up? And then, we want to make sure we're following all you're doing.
So a lot of things are up in the air right now. Obviously, I love to still continue playing baseball and being part of the baseball community. I saw recently an application for the diversity pipeline for scouting with Major League Baseball. So maybe that could be a thing, who knows, if my visa allows. There's also an opening in the front office at Pittsburgh Pirates. That could be something, who knows, it's all up in the air. Otherwise, I'm hoping to go to graduate school to study Middle Eastern studies.
That's fantastic. I have no doubt you're going to keep using baseball as you move forward. And that's part of one of my other questions for both of you. These are individual personal experiences. And again, that's one of the things that I think is so important about our stories. and our connection to baseball, whether it's as a player, an umpire, a fan, or whatever. Can you talk a little bit about how do you plan? How have you used baseball? What is the, for you, Suzie, it's going to be a little different, right? It's going to be, than Laura. There's the physical, I've been playing for Laura, but baseball is more than just this thing you guys are watching, right? You're here telling us all about this. And so how have you used it, your relationship to it?
I'll start. Okay, so I mean, baseball, we know, is just so much more than baseball. So especially doing a trip like this as the nation's trying to get out of a pandemic, that in itself has been so incredible. And you can just see being at a game for people after no one went to a game for a whole season, it's incredibly healing too. So it's really cool to see just how much baseball means to people outside of just a game that we watch every day. So it's been really special.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Laura.
Do you mind repeating the question again?
Oh, sure. It was a bit rambling. But basically it's about how are you using your relationship to baseball? How have you, and how do you plan to use it? I mean, beyond the obvious, you become an announcer, you become a player, how have you used that personal relationship with baseball? How has it helped you to grow and to kind of understand who you are and who you are in the world?
Right. There really is. I feel like for me, baseball is my backbone. It really helped me to grow as a person, having to fight through adversity, having to face these challenges, having to hear people talk behind you, and being so, I guess, out there, especially in Europe. Everyone, I'm sure quite a few people in the baseball realm at least know my name because of the tournaments that I've been part of. So just being a role model, at least for these people, just not just for women, but for men as well, is understanding that when you have a sport that's so awesome, that teaches you about life, you have to use it, most of it. And I'm very fortunate, like today, I get to do that. So it's really not just a sport to have fun with.
Yeah, very well said. Thank you. And Jay wants to know, is there an Arabic word for baseball?
I don't think there is. Well, at least I've been saying baseball in an Arabic accent, but
yeah, I'm not sure if that counts, but that may not be what he was talking about. So do you guys have some other questions, comments, some additions you'd like to add? We have a few minutes.
I would love to add something that, I just kind of thought of listening to Laura talk about her experiences playing baseball. One of the things that I see, not just at myself, but a lot of other women who cover baseball, especially female baseball broadcasters, a lot of men will argue like, oh, well, they never played the game. Well, I hate that argument because first of all, most of the male broadcasters you love never played either. But it's really cool to see women like Laura actually playing. So we can finally stop hearing that argument. So I love what you're doing.
That's fantastic. Well said. Very well said. So apparently on your Twitter, it describes you, Suzie, as a ballpark food expert. I'm dying to know, what's your favorite ballpark food?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So yeah, I'm kind of a baseball food expert. Years ago, my best friend and I started a food blog dedicated to ballpark food. It's called Nacho Scout, which I think is a very cute, clever name. So yeah, I have been sampling ballpark food in a very official capacity, of course. But my favorite ballpark food of all time are the monster nachos at Coors Field, but specifically in section 110. They have a green chili queso. They line the chips up vertically, so like every chip gets a little bit of something, and they're great. And this is a great age for ballpark food. So yeah, not so much this season because ballparks haven't been prioritizing you know, the over-the-top foods. They've been prioritizing safety and keeping the park open.
Right.
But in previous years, it's been on point, and we'll see it get there again. But yeah, thank you for asking about the ballpark food.
Well, I'm telling you, it's no longer, when you go to the ballpark, it's no longer just a hot dog and beer, right?
Far from it.
Yeah, but that remains the best ballpark food. I don't care what you say, a hot dog and a beer at the ballpark, right? Do you, this is very interesting for Laura. Perry wants to know what kind of training programs do they have in the UK for umpires?
So I'm so unsure about this question. I had to look at it and I tried to do some research real quick.
Yeah.
But it seems like it's still not quite there. I know there's a great program for women as well in the US, and it's very much developed, but I think the UK is still lagging behind on that. But it's definitely something that's necessary and that needs to be developed for sure.
Excellent, excellent. Well, and an interesting one for both of you, I think. What do you hope your legacy to be? What do you want your legacy to be? And in terms of your baseball life?
Wow. Okay. I'm like, I didn't think I was old enough to be asked what my legacy is.
Yeah, this is deep.
Would you like to go ahead?
I'll start, I guess. You know what? I would just, no matter what happens, I just hope I can be a champion for other women in baseball, and to help further the game with kids of all ages. But yeah, I just hope I can leave a positive mark in some way.
Good, good. Yes, Laura.
Likewise, I hope that my story and my journey has been recognized at least, and can be used for other people to realize that there is a space for women on the national team, in baseball, in the UK, anywhere, that it's a sport for everyone. Yeah,
that's great. And really, isn't that, that's one of the reasons we're all here in some ways, is that, it's being able to take our experiences, personal experiences in the game, and what we know about it, and share it. And so that, the generation that comes after you, Laura and Suzie, they're not sitting in the fans with people who are abusive to them, or, it's all about passing that on. We have a couple of other questions. So we'll just do maybe one or two more, and then that ought to do it. Suzie J wants to know, do you use pencil and notebook, or is all note-taking digital?
I prefer to travel light because I'm terrified of losing a notebook. Yeah. So I have been taking notes on my phone. I'm also a big audio memo person. So I'll do voice notes too if I am in a position where I can't write, because I'm also doing a lot of driving. I am driving this whole MLB road trip. So I do a lot of voice notes in my car too. So for the sake of kind of keeping everything in one place, I kind of do everything on my phone because I know it's always attached to my body. But yeah, I not to diminish the, benefits of using a pencil and paper, but for this case, I need to kind of travel a little light.
Right, I understand. And Laura, interesting question. And this is something that I was thinking about too, as you were talking. Have you received any negativity from your softball environment for continuing playing baseball, or vice versa? And so, yeah, I'd be curious to know about that as well.
I wouldn't say negativity exactly, but I'd have the softball coaches tweaking my hitting, or tweaking the way I throw, saying, a softball swing is different to a baseball swing, when in fact it really isn't. So I haven't been educating them, but I've been absorbing the information that I think is necessary for me, and taking into account the other ones, or keeping them in mind of those comments.
Yeah, but nothing from your teammates, really? No kind of negativity, or fans, or?
Probably just jealousy that I got to play with 18 boys.
That's great. Leslie wants to know, Suzie, what inspired you to take this trip? And that's a really good question.
Yeah, I get asked this a lot too. So thank you for asking, Leslie. It's every baseball fan's dream to do a trip like this, and to do it all in one season is like another level. It's just so incredible to immerse yourself in this game and get to see it from so many different settings. But also, I mean, I've been a reporter for several years, and that in itself is a very taxing job on your mental health. But then if you add, the pandemic, not seeing loved ones for a really long time, I needed a break. So when my contract was up at my TV station, I kind of decided to not renew, take a step back, spend a little time with my family. And then since I kind of had that opening, I was like, well, this is the time to do a trip like this. So you kind of have to take advantage of the opportunity when it presents itself.
That's right. That's right. Well, I can't wait. How many more ballparks do you have left?
Okay, so you'll have to follow me on this a little bit. So I have been to 28 ballparks, but I have 3 left. So the math does not add up there. So I went to Buffalo to see a Blue Jays home game back when they were, only playing in the United States. But then once Canada opened back up, I realized, okay, I'm going to need to get to Canada at the end of the season. So I still have to visit Dodger Stadium, and I have to visit Arizona. But then after that, I will be heading to Toronto to see another Blue Jays home game. So technically this is 31 ballparks in one season. So it's unreal.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Well, I would love to, can't wait to hear how it all goes. And of course, we do have the one Blue Jay fan on here who wants to know what the experience was like in Buffalo.
It was interesting. It was unlike any Major League Baseball game I've ever been to, just because it is such a small, intimate setting. But it was also really funny because most of the fans there were wearing Buffalo Bills gear. It was very funny. But I've been a huge Blue Jays fan too, because their AA team plays the Yard Goats a lot. So I saw Vlad Jr. and Bo Bichette, I just saw them crush the Yard Goats every time they came through Hartford. So it's so cool seeing them doing it for real now. So you got some Blue Jays love here too.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Kate will be glad to hear that. Well, listen, if there's nothing else, I think we could all continue this conversation for a long time. I see you, Marlene. If there are no other questions, I want to thank you two so much for being just very real about your experiences and your connection to baseball. And that's what I hope this panel will always be. And because, I suspect if we just had you two back every year, that perspective that you just gave us would probably be different. And so I just really appreciate it. And I think everyone has enjoyed it. So this will end our panel for this evening. Please make sure that you are on and ready to rock and roll at 11:30 Eastern tomorrow, because we're going to have a panel moderated by Perry Barber that will focus on international umpires. I'm not sure there's been a panel like this before, and it's going to be a real treat. So make sure that you are there and ready to go. And thank you all so much for joining us again for the 3rd Women in Baseball Conference. Leslie, would you like to say something before people?
Well, I was just gonna say to everybody, if you want to stick around for 2 seconds, I got something really cool to show you that just arrived. Nobody else is. We run an art contest that some of you know, and so I thought you might like to see these 2 pieces that just arrived while you guys were talking, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. So if you want to see them, bear with me, and if I can do this correctly, I will show them to you, and we'll see. They're pretty cool. I thought you might like to see these. You guys can see my screen?
Oh, nice. Yes, we can.
Anybody? So this was done by Elise Dodelis. She actually participated in our Negro Leagues art contest a few years ago and wanted to do something on women's baseball. And she wondered if anybody might hazard a guess as to who these are. This is a very specific player that she chose to depict in this really cool piece of art.
Beth Greenwood.
That's a good guess, but younger than Beth.
Really?
Oh.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, she was at the time.
Don't know.
It's a little league pitcher, actually.
Oh, the one that just pitched?
Nope. This is 2013. Her name was Kristen Moldovan, and she pitched for Massapequa, New York. She was one of the earlier. So she's one of that very unique group that got to pitch, and has pitched in so she pitched for Massapequa in 2013.
That's a fantastic.
Yeah. So that's the first one. And then if you bear with me so I can do this correctly, she sent two. So give me a second and I'll share the other one. And this one, Laura, you'll particularly, I think, appreciate maybe in terms of some of your experience. This is from the USA national team.
Oh, love that. Oh.
That's fantastic.
This is Jade Gortares from the USA.
Wow.
And I don't know, Laura, if you ever have played against her by any chance? I have no idea if you have.
I have not. I watched her play though, but never played against.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just thought I'd share those with you. I thought everybody would read them. They just.
Who's the artist again, Leslie?
Her name is Elise Dodelis, and I'm gonna. So in case anybody wonders, there were a lot of links and things in the chat today. We had trouble so that people could copy it. I've written down every single link that was put in the chat, including Elise's email, because she said in case anybody wants to know more about the art, we're going to send that out to everybody that was registered. Right. So you'll all get all the different emails that everybody was putting in there, because a number of people have been asking. So we want to make sure everybody doesn't miss out on any of that. So
that's great.
Just wanted to share those with everybody.
That's fantastic.
So
those are wonderful. You know, it just, the art just gets better and better, right?
I'll wait till you see some of, we have a ton of art that came in for this year's contest. Maybe I'll show some of that tomorrow too.
That's great.
Leslie, you said that was Chrissy Wendell?
For
the first one was Chrissy Wendell?
No, Kristen Moldovan.
Crystal Moldovan. Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, Chrissy Wendell was
Kristen
Moldovan. Sorry.
Moldovan.
Yep.
She's not on my list. I'll have to add her.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks everybody. We'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Thanks to all the presenters today. It was awesome.
It was fantastic. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow, bright and early, 11:30.
Thanks, Laura.
Really not bright and early, though.
Thanks, Suzie.
Yeah.
Too bad you can't meet in the bar.
It's not going to be as bright and early.
No.
As if you're from California.
Well, that's but last year we started at 10, so we're an hour and a half later this year.
Right.
Thank you.
West Coast appreciate it.
It's 10:30 by us.
Tech team.
We did that for all our West Coast people.
Yeah.
Want to get up.
We appreciate it. Super.
No, you
appreciate
did it for me. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, Marlene.
See you in the morning. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, for
Bye,
sure.
Perry.
Bye, Perry. We're excited, Perry.
Me too.
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
We had a practice Zoom last night.
Yeah, I didn't get home in time to join you guys, so I was sorry I missed it, but
yeah,
that's great.
Now it's going to be all surprise to me tomorrow, so maybe it was better.
You know, I have to say, this episode tonight, I mean, we are starting to get into some areas that you just don't hear about when you go to, you know, men's conference or, you know, right. Male dominated conferences.
Right.
And I just absolutely love it. Right. I'm so thankful to you and Leslie and Scott and everybody at SABR for doing this and for setting me up to do the panel tomorrow and just everything that you are doing to make this such an extraordinary experience for everybody.
Well, it's only extraordinary because of the experiences and the things that people have to share. So
yeah,
not, you know,
which are
every
largely
year-
untold as yet. And, you know,
And that's why I think those personal stories are so important. You know, they just connect us in ways that, you know, we don't know. I mean, Laura's story is phenomenal.
It's a virtually unknown story. And
yeah, I mean, it's amazing. And
she's played longer than most others have played. I mean, and particularly with on men's teams and all the different experiences she has.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is Kathy on a GoPro?
Where are you, Kathy? We see a blank wall.
There
you are.
There she is.
I'm here.
We're here. We're here.
She's still here.
She's in a tunnel somewhere.
Oh, so just so you guys all know from the committee, the program books are done.
Yeah.
I got a call this afternoon, bizarrely, and they said, "Aren't you coming to pick up the program?" I'm like, "Wait, they're done? How did they get done?" I said, "We're mailing them out." And they're like, "Oh, we thought you had to have them for the conference."
Oh my God.
Did we forget to tell them? Did we forget?
Well, Catherine's going to go get them next. Well, I'm sorry, Catherine.
Did we forget to tell them we were going?
No, I told them that. But Willie, who's the guy in charge, he took 2 days off. And so the rest of the staff didn't know it. And so they thought they had to get them done.
Oh, no.
Oh my God.
So Lynn called me this afternoon and said, "Do I need to go drop them off or is somebody coming to pick them up?" And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
"What?
That's great.
That's awesome." But no, it was, so
That's
yeah, so they're ready.
So do you think I need to call before I go by or just show? No, I'll call before I go
Yeah,
by.
I would probably call just to make sure, but you should be fine.
Yeah. But then they'll have them, you know, handy or something.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. And then I need to get them to Kathy, right?
Yep, because Kathy's students, and then everybody will get to see this wonderful logo on the front of the cover of the.
I can't wait.
Nice.
I can't wait. Kathy and Leslie, I apologize for the welcome. The Rockford movie is on my schedule, and so
Yeah,
that's
that was last. That must have never got taken off from last year because they never sent us one.
okay. Because I just wanted to make, I apologize for putting you in that spot, but it was listed.
It was a leftover from last, because they had that. And
it was the commercial.
Yeah, it was the commercial. That,
yeah. Right.
So we could pull up last year's and find it and show it, but.
It's no big deal. I just wanted you to know I just wasn't making stuff up.
I do have it, so we can do it.
Yeah. Okay. No problem.
It was all good.
It was hey, it's great. So Leslie, before I get off here and collapse, and it's all Kathy's fault, by the way. It's been an exhausting day, but I'm just curious, how many registrants do we have?
Well, if you count all the students that have signed up who will be appearing at various points we have 115 as of right now.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I promise I'll do it.
Right. Yeah. Nope. I know. But yes, we're at 100.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was very good.
Fantastic.
Right.
So we got, and we had nearly 70 different people participating today because I was keeping track.
That's really amazing.
It was a great start.
Good job. Good job.
And as always, the chat, the stuff that was going on in there.
Oh,
if you're not watching, you gotta watch. And tomorrow, so for anybody who wonders, tomorrow, Jacob, I think I got the word that will be tomorrow, so we can actually copy it. Is that correct? I see maybe he's still there. But either way, yeah.
Good on that.
Okay, I wrote down everything just for today because there was a lot of stuff in there. But and is Maureen gone? I'll pass it on to her because she's going to make a list for us of everything.
Okay.
So
well, thank you guys so much.
I'm glad you guys had fun at the golf outing.
It was fantastic.
Oh,
it was
good.
Truly, people had a
Who
great
won?
time.
Just out of curiosity, who was?
Jay Graham's foursome. The Graham Spencer was one of our sponsors.
Cool.
And not only did their foursome win, two of their people won longest drive and closest to the pin. So
wow.
I accused them of cheating.
I was going to say they cleaned up.
There's
Must
something
have been
wrong-
rigged.
There's something wrong when a bunch of guys win all the prizes.
Yeah. The next
Yeah.
year we're gonna do a women's and a men's drives and stuff. So we'll figure it all out. But it was really great. Kathy did a great job.
Yes.
Greta and Catherine and Rosemary were all there helping and moving things forward, along with an enormous number of Rockford University students.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it was just
that's cool.
Yeah, it was great. It was a great experience. So next year, hopefully we'll all be there in person and we can
Bigger and better.
take over the whole golf course next year.
Yeah, bigger and better. Yeah.
That's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
Very cool.
It was good. Kathy
Well,
did a great
thank you
job.
guys. I am going to go collapse for a bit, and then I will see everyone at 11:30 tomorrow.
11:30 Eastern, whatever time it is for wherever
Well,
you
I'm going to tell everybody to log on about 10 minutes early. Is that good? Okay.
Oh,
All
yeah,
right.
your group. Yes, we'll let you all in early. Yep, absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. for
Thank
sure.
you.
That's great.
Thanks, Perry. Oh, Perry, one
Fabulous.
quick question.
Yes.
Do you, because I don't know where you are, do you need me tomorrow for your announcement to have a model of what the award is to be able to show? Or do you have yours?
Oh, no, I don't. You're right.
Okay.
It's in Florida. Thank
That's
you.
what I thought. Okay.
Oh, no, wait a minute.
I've got one that I can show. I just wondered.
Okay. Yeah,
Okay.
Thank you.
Cool. Just thought
All
I'd
right.
check.
Good thought. Yeah.
That's
thank you for
another one
that.
that everybody get. Lots of new reveals tomorrow.
I know.
Right.
Big news. Big news tomorrow.
Big news
My
tomorrow.
lips are sealed.
All
Sworn
right.
to
Good night,
secrecy.
everyone.
All right.
All right.
Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Bye, Ryan.
It's nice to see you, Lauren.
Hey, actually, I meant to send you an email earlier, if possible. I don't know if you've seen the glove project I'm working on for my work.
No.
So I got a job working for History for Hire, which is a prop shop here in Los Angeles that supplies period props for all sorts of movies and stuff like that. And they have a big baseball collection and they've hired me to help renovate it. Yeah, I'm really excited. So I am working on like some of them are replicas, but the majority of them are actual period gloves, and they are as gross as you'd think, some of them. But one of the things we're doing is we're trying to become a resource for prop masters and anyone who's doing a baseball movie or TV show or anything like that to like be able to come to us and we can tell you exactly what kind of glove, exactly what kind of bat, like equipment, all of that stuff. So I've been doing a ton of research, but I have gaps in my knowledge.
Okay.
So I am looking for people who know about gloves. Specifically, the time periods I'm missing are the 1930s,
Okay.
and I have a gap in the 1950s because we have a ton of catalogs at History for Hire, but but the majority of my stuff is like Sears and Roebuck and Montgomery Ward. I'm looking for Spalding. I'm looking for Rawlings. I'm looking for Wilson. Nakoma when it was. So anyone who has access to catalogs, I would love to meet them and love to talk to them and just kind of, learn. But yeah, I know you're really busy this weekend. So that's why I was like hesitating emailing.
No, we'll put out a SABR call because SABR is the group that is likely to have somebody that knows.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Even if like it's one person with one catalog, it might not be a catalog I've seen before. I'd love to see it. So
awesome. We can do that. Very cool.
Awesome. Yeah.
I took notes. We're good to go.
And maybe I'll give a presentation about it next year.
That would be cool. Kathy's mobile now. All right, everybody.
Thank you so much, Leslie. I'll see you tomorrow.
Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, Kathy. Tell your students they're wonderful.